Hello, Barbkin. As we mentioned in our past episode, this one is going to be a little chaotic. Some of the information is a little outdated as well, but if you stick around for our post-excavation at the end, we have some new analysis and some new thoughts about episodes 7 and 8, some new predictions based on these crumbs and new crumbs. As a reminder, Beans also cooked up a little something special for you this week, a lemon cake. If you would like to follow along with her recipe, you can do so. The bulk of the instructions are from 16 minutes to 20 minutes into the episode. So we hope you stick around, we hope you enjoy the chaos, and we hope you enjoy Mama Peaches.
Hello everyone and welcome back to What a Barb, a Polin podcast, the promised episode. We have made it at last. I say that, we're recording it, we haven't even put it out yet. So if this makes it to air, miracle upon miracles, welcome to the mythical, the fabled, the magical.
The final crumb down.
It is the final crumb down. Brought to you in the nick of time, like that deadline that Eloise gives to Pen. Unfortunately, we will not be swooning at the last moment because we are getting this fucking episode out one way or another, by hook or by crook, even if it's put out at like 11:59 on June the 12th. We will get it to you.
We thank you for your patience, but if one of you messages us TikTok, we will be sending around one of the guys who gave Archie that bottle of poison in season 1.
You'll be blocked immediately. You have all been very, very patient. I don't know if that's just because no one cared about this episode, to be honest.
It might have been that.
No, people have asked.
Every episode we've been like, the highly anticipated. No one has given a shit. It's like kept us up at night. Well, no. But we've been like, oh my God, Block 4 Part 2, Block 4 Part... We've talked about it so many times and it's going to be such a disappointing episode.
I listened to it back last night and like, now that they've shown some of the wedding, we talk about things you already know about, but we have some fun stories about our experiences.
Yeah.
Discovering that the wedding was happening and stuff like that. And there are a few crumbs that you may not have heard, but generally it's our storytelling. So hope you enjoy a good story.
This is just the last episode we're going to put out before Part 2 arrives. So it just is what it is, you know?
Yeah.
So we'll get into what Block 4 Part 2 is in a minute if you are a new listener. Also, you might be like, where the hell is Beans? She's on a mission. She's got the oven on. She's busy. You will hear her in this episode, I promise you. You will not be devoid of Beans content.
Yes, we said that she would be making something special. She's cooking up something special for you.
As we speak.
She was in the other 3 intros we recorded for this episode.
Oh my God.
It's been quite a journey to try to get here. But she's not in this one.
We're not even joking. This is a 4th time we've recorded an intro. So this episode that you're going to hear, Block 4 Part 2, we recorded in January. Mm-hmm. So the things that we would have discussed would have been like interesting bits of information that, you know,
happened in January.
Yeah. Because like January we'd had like the stills at Christmas, but beyond that like nothing was known about the season. And then every single time we were trying to release this episode, we'd sit down together and we'd record another introduction to be like, hi guys, we're finally getting around to and so we'd record it. Bear in mind, this is our 4th introduction, right? And every single time we'd then record it and try to put the episode together, something else would happen that meant it just kept getting pushed back and back. Even last week, we were supposed to put this episode out and then the trailer was dropped. And we were like, for fuck's sake, we like promised this episode. So, Lecky, I don't know if you've still got in the archives, you know, back in the... rip down those dust sheets like Colin will be. I'm sure you've got some of our old intros, including some quite interesting little tidbits that you never heard.
Yes, Veg went on a little excursion.
I went for a trip to Featherington House.
And what's hilarious is that we're going to include it as an insert, but what is hilarious is during your recounting of your adventure, you introduce your own insert. So we're going to have Veg introducing herself, telling the story of her trip to Basildon. It'll be fun.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And at the time, the trip to Basildon was like breaking news because we'd never really figured out where that moment with Pen and Colin in the garden, what we now know is their first kiss, at that point we hadn't known where that was taking place. So she went to Basildon, which is where the Featherington House exterior is filmed, and she found the exact doorway. And then by the time we would have got around to posting it, like now,
the show has come out.
We all know where that scene took place, so it's not exciting. But I tell you what, at the time it was a thrill.
It was. I took my vagina to nowhere else I can't remember the name of it. Where was it? Basildon Park. But yeah, so I was wandering around, insert recording of me walking around. Hey everybody, Veg here. Very exciting moment live at the scene of potentially the first kiss. It's a lovely day here. I had a jacket potato with tuna for lunch, and I've just taken fucking 3,000 pictures. But anyway, yeah, here's the sound of the ground. That's the sound of the ground where potentially they kiss. The view's lovely. There's birds singing. What a day. Had a great time. But yeah, so I was walking around the gardens, and I'd walked around for a while, and I'd like taken a lot of pictures of doors and doorways. There was no signal as well, so I kept having to go to the cafe and like get Wi-Fi and see what I was being sent to them. I'm like, right, okay. And then I like was gonna give up. And then I sent a few, and I was like, look, here's your damn door obs. And then she was like, is that not it? And I like I Googled how tall is Nick a cockland, and I like crouched the appropriate number of centimetres and like took a selfie. And I was like, oh my God. But yeah, so it's one of the outside courtyards. So facing out of it is the garden. And everyone I spoke to said, oh yeah, they filmed in the garden. Nothing about like anywhere else. So I was like, right, stick to the garden. And I couldn't find like a tall hedge anywhere, and no pointy topiary to be found. But there's plenty of greenery around. Then you've got this doorway, and it opens out into this courtyard.
Yeah, look, if you ever want to visit Basildon, we can tell you the exact doorway that you need to go to.
Head us up.
If you want to recreate it. So that's kind of what's gone on with that. We'll chat about Block 4 Part 2 and what that means in just a second. But how are you both doing? We're recording this on Sunday night, so it's the 9th. So it's the day before Polin week. By the way, I've got a cold. And if you're like, obvs, you're always ill. Yes, because I've not slept properly in 2 years. That will lower the old immune system right down to the ground, won't it, guys?
That'll do it.
Oh, Lecky, I had a dream about you last night. I told you this, didn't I?
You did.
It was very intense. We were fighting fires together in like this town. Like every single street was on fire. I've had a fever, and I think this is like a natural manifestation of my fever. We were like running into these buildings. I don't know what you were doing, Veg. You fucking...
I was gently roasting in the fire.
She was gently roasting. She was cooking. And we were running into all these houses and like screaming at everybody like, get out, get out, get out. Oh. And then we went in this random house, and we like sat down together, and we were just having a chat, and there was someone at the door. And who was at the door, Lecky?
Sophie Beckett. We didn't know who she was. And we weren't looking for her.
I don't even know who she is.
But she showed up.
Oh. This is how you know you're a broken person. And I opened the door, and I was like, it's Sophie. I was like, come on in, Sophie. And she had a letter. And then she like went upstairs to the bathroom, and I was like, I promise I'll take good care of your letter. And then we just sat and read all of the letters. Don't trust me with your correspondence. So if you want to know who Sophie Beckett is, I know. So that's how I'm doing. Lecky, how are you doing?
My husband and I have been watching Farmer Wants a Wife.
Farmer Wants a Wife?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, okay, the Australian one is very good. The US one is very manufactured. Obviously, this woman from Brooklyn doesn't want to live on a farm. She's just there for, kind of clout or whatever. But we watched the most recent US one. The Australian one I do recommend if you do like romance shows.
It's a romance show.
It's like The Bachelor, but for farmers.
Yeah, reality TV.
Wow.
The Australian one's really good. I haven't watched the second season of Australia yet, but we just watched season 2 of the US one, and to not be too spoilery,
spoiler alert,
there is a woman who I'm pretty sure was a sociopath on this season, so it was kind of entertaining.
God, I feel like Devlin could go on it like The Vegetarian Wants a Wife.
One of the guys this season, I think he didn't even have a farm. He was going to start a farm. He had
I've heard that before. I've heard that before.
Oh, please.
Come on.
Yeah, future farmer.
Big ideas, yeah.
Future iceberg Devlin can be on Iceberg Wants a Wife.
Iceberg Wants a Wife.
So how do they work out if they're going to be good farmer spouses? Do they like slap them across the face at 4 a.m. or?
Oh no, they don't get slapped in the face. They do like farm activities.
What farms have you been on where you get slapped in the face?
No, it's just a representation of like get rudely awakened.
That reminds me of like a really traumatizing field trip I had to take in elementary school. We had to go and stay like a weekend on a ship. We were reading like a book at the time where we had to imagine like we were living on a ship. We had to do a bunch of like the ship's duties, like cleaning the head and pulling down ropes and like pulleys and stuff. And I remember crying and wanting to go home.
Oh my god!
And we got rudely awakened. We had to like stay up in the middle of the night. We each had our shift where we were watching from like the sides of the ships and everything.
Babe, that's called child labour, my love.
Were you in the Navy?
I know that America's different, but it's illegal where we are. The worst school trip I ever went on was we went to a monastery and we had to pretend to be monks.
You had to pretend to be monks?
Yeah, we had to dress up as monks. And we were starving because we'd had to travel for ages. And we weren't allowed to speak at lunch and they just served us cabbage soup. And we were only allowed to ask for more salt. We weren't allowed anything else. And it was the most miserable afternoon of my life.
What the fuck kind of school trips were you going on?
It was horrible.
We went to France and we had a nice time.
If you want the North and South divide, she went to fucking France. I went and ate cabbage soup we were on the floor of like an old monastery. Not the time. So we're doing well. Veg, how are you doing?
I'm good. I just settled in my middle place.
Yeah, like your interim.
But I have just ordered sofas.
And you settled on a colour scheme.
Yes. Inspired by a mug that I saw at Chelsea Flower Show. The colour scheme is
Aw.
navy blue, moss green, burnt orange.
She's designing her future abode around carrots, people. Don't let her tell you otherwise.
It's not a carrot orange. It's a Texas Longhorn orange.
Like a char grilled carrot.
Sure. Honey glazed.
Okay.
Roasted.
Did we talk about the Chelsea Flower Show on the pod? I know we're just rambling. Honestly, like, I think we're just going to keep rambling because we know that there's not actually that much interesting in Block 4 Part 2.
We went to the Chelsea Flower Show. We were amongst a lot of toffs. It made me feel
We don't belong.
horribly classist against the upper class people. I hated it with all of my heart. And while we were there, we checked out the Bridgerton garden.
No. The way you phrased that there, you were like, we just happened to be in the area while we were there.
Okay.
No.
Okay, that was the entire purpose of the trip.
The whole reason we went. And when we got there, we tried to act like we were interested in anything else. Yeah. But we were just interested in the Bridgerton garden.
Yeah. We went to this wine tasting thing, but I don't heavily drink often, but the night before I had a lot. It was not a good time. It was a wobble in my breakup journey, and then they gave me this rosé. I was like, no part of me wants this. Please leave me alone. But yeah, we did see the Bridgerton garden and then we kind of made an effort walking around. And then there was a big display of vegetables in a frame. And then I get to sit in the frame.
Like a massive frame, like a life-sized frame.
Did you get a picture?
We did get a picture.
You should hang that in your new
Aw.
flat. The picture of you surrounded by vegetables.
Cute.
But yeah, we had a great time. It was very cute actually seeing Pen in her Garden of Deceit. I don't remember what the exact title was. It was basically that though. It was, and every single time we saw a bee, we'd be like, oh my God, take a picture of the bee in Penelope's garden.
Initially, we were like, oh my God, quickly, there's a bee. But then we realised, oh yeah, bees like flowers. There were just lots of bees.
I don't think we've done anything else Bridgerton-y, have we? Beyond, live, breathe, eat it.
Yeah.
How do we feel about finally being at part 2? Because this is it now, guys. Like, once this is out, the years of speculation, the years of analysis, of squinting at Crumbs, all of that will finally come to an end.
I'm a little sad about it. I'm a little nostalgic. I feel like this time it's been really hectic, but really special and a unique part of my life. And I would never have met you guys if I hadn't become interested in Bridgerton and fallen in love with Polin's love story. And I don't know, it's just going to be weird.
It'll be nice to sleep. In the past few months, it's been crazy. Yeah. So, the fact that, the promo will sort of wind down and we can get some sleep is quite nice. But yeah, no more speculation.
I'm feeling sad about it, though. I've spent so long anticipating Polin's love story that for it to finally be over will be sad. But I really hope that Nicola and Luke come back for future seasons, or that they let them come back, because I love their characters and I don't know, I'm just a little sad about it ending.
It's very surreal, isn't it? It's very surreal that we're already here. No, we're not already here because it took forever. But it's so strange. But here we go, really. So what we're going to do, we're going to head on into the episode itself, Block 4 Part 2. So, Lecky, for those who may be new, or, when did we release Block 4 Part 1? Let me see.
Oh, dear.
What was it called? Oh, Crumbs, what a exterior church wall. Another gripping title from What a Barb, a Polin podcast.
We deliberately try to choose titles that sound kind of dull. Because it amuses us.
We create something called anti-content.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
We're just not very clickbaity, unfortunately. Oh, yeah, okay, so part 1, we released it in March. So for those who can't remember that far back, because we have lived many, many lives since then, what are we going to be discussing in this episode?
We are going to be discussing the production crumbs for what we think are episodes 7 and 8. However, in retrospect, we found out that some of the content that we're discussing actually happens in other episodes, and in fact, in some episodes that we saw in part 1.
Yeah, it's great. We're going to tell you about things that happened that you already know about.
Yeah.
But, you know, isn't that just what history is at the end of the day? People talking about things that have already happened.
I don't get why you can't teach us history instead of always harping on the past. Glinda.
I think we also teased this too, that we have the audio recording of Veg and Ob's meeting for the first time. So it's a little bit of our journey will be in there as well.
Stay tuned.
So, so these are the production crumbs for Block 4, but they're half of them because we already did half of the episode.
Yeah.
Not very helpful. If you want to listen to the other bit, go listen to that. We're going to be breaking down what we know or suspect that happened during filming. So if there were filming leaks, if there were little crumbs dotting around as they were doing production. So the time period that we're talking about is sort of, I think this is more February, March 2023, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of right at the end of production. We're going to be picking up
with the wedding. So that was February.
Get the wedding bells on. We're off to the Polin wedding. And you know what? At the time, we didn't actually know if it was a Polin wedding. And we always said it was. And now it actually is.
So, yeah, we're going to be arguing that it's a Polin wedding. Of course you know it's a Polin wedding, but it's
You're going to be like, we get it, we've seen it. But you know what? Here's to 2 years of clowning.
Without further ado, here comes the bride. Hello and welcome to Lemons and Legumes. I am your temporary host, Mary Peaches. As promised from last week's podcast, Bean said that she would make a lemon cake today, and here we are. Now, the girls requested a bitter cake, a bitter lemon cake, but quite frankly, I only like bitters in my drinks. So today, I will instead be making a tart but sweet lemon cake, because much like our couples in Bridgerton, we have to go through the tough, tart times to get to the sweet but salacious happy endings. And of course, the recipe will be in the show notes for today, so Beans, take it away.
Welcome back! Okay, welcome back to making a lemon cake with beans. So we're going to whisk together the flour, the baking powder, and the salt in a large bowl and then set it aside. And then you're going to beat the butter on high speed in a large bowl until smooth and creamy. This is why having it at room temperature matters, because you will literally see the butter getting lighter as it becomes creamed. I'm sorry to say that, but I mean, look, we are talking about Bridgerton, and so cream is involved. After you do that, you're going to add your granulated sugar and you're going to beat that on high until it also becomes creamed. I'm sorry. You're going to scrape that shit to the sides, and then you're going to crack your eggs into a separate bowl at first, and then put them in one at a time until the egg is completely mixed in. Scrape that shit down again, and then you're going to add that sour cream, that lemon juice, that lemon zest and vanilla extract, and then beat on medium speed until combined. Scrape down those sides again. Scrape them down. Just like Penn is just scraping down the truth from Colin, and Colin is scraping down his feelings for Penn in the first half of the show until it all bubbles up and comes out of him. You know what? Things are coming, things are creaming. That's just how life goes. All right. You're going to slowly add the dry ingredients until combined. That batter is going to be thick, like the thickness of Colin's arms. What do you think I was going to say? Now we're going to spoon or spread that batter into the prepared loaf pan and bake for 55 to 65 minutes. You're going to spoon and spread that cake, that batter, like Colin will spoon. I can't get it out. I'm sorry. I mean, Colin has no problem getting it out, you know? Oh, damn. This was supposed to be like a helpful segment. Like, I was going to give advice and everything, but my head's just like in the gutter. There's so many words here that are just overly sexual. Maybe I need to get laid. And there has been a man that's been saying he wants to like bend me over. So maybe that's just something that I do. And you know what, Lucky? Keep this in. Who's ever editing, keep it in. Spooning and spreading, putting that in. You want to tent that cake with aluminum foil halfway through the baking to prevent the top from overbrowning. The cake will be done when a toothpick is inserted in the center and comes out mostly clean. And don't be alarmed if yours is taking longer. Much like most things in life, you cannot compare your journey to somebody else's because we all get to different destinations at different times. And that's also the same with Colin and Penelope. They're two people who are figuring themselves out. Colin is on a different life path to figure out his purpose, and you'll get there. You'll make it. You'll do it. There we go. Finally, some good advice that isn't about getting plowed. Woof. Anyway, nothing in life happens very quickly. I'm going to be honest. It doesn't. Unless it's like you have IBS. You know, you have IBS and then you got to go. That's quick. That's quick. I'm sorry.
Are you guys ready for another set of nuptials? Because it's time to head on back. Where else would we go than to Greenwich, to the Old Royal Naval College, where we seem to just be a permanent fucking residence at this point.
Yeah.
Yeet. So we mentioned that they were filming here last block as well. They filmed at Old Royal Naval College quite a few times. Mm-hmm. And specifically, they filmed at the Chapel of St. Peter and St. Paul in Block 3 as well. And then on February 7th, we received word that the chapel was going to be closed for filming once again. There was even a photo from inside the chapel showing some intriguing blue drapes that had been hung around the entrance to the chapel in preparation for filming.
Bridgerton blue drapes. Mm-hmm. Very exciting.
Well, exactly. Now, I have to say that everyone was so excited when we saw that the chapel was going to be closed because it looked like you say, it looked like Bridgerton drapes. And we're like, oh my God, is there going to be a wedding? Is there going to be a church scene? But then it turned out that there were BBC vans that had been seen outside and that songs of praise had been recorded there. And so everyone was completely gutted because we really got carried away. And then we're like, oh my God, it wasn't for Bridgerton at all.
It wasn't Bridgerton.
Absolute clowns.
Well, yeah.
Oh my God.
They were filming songs of praise. I don't know if you know what songs of praise is, Americans. It's just like a
choir.
It's just, they sing choral songs.
They just record a choir singing some songs, basically.
It's a smash hit, genuinely. There was a lot of confusion as to what was and wasn't being filmed, so I decided to take one for the team. I lived nearish to Greenwich at the time, so I decided to walk over to check it out, and my, I hit the jackpot. I saw all the signs that were set up to say that there was going to be filming in the area, and then I walked by the chapel to see what was going on, and they were setting up for a wedding. 100% it was a wedding. There is no doubt about this one. There were tons of flowers. We'll post the photos, but the flowers were just overflowing and they were very, very pollen coloured. So there were tons of blue flowers, tons of yellow flowers. It was very surreal. And then most notably when they were setting up, because they had the chapel doors open, and so you could kind of see inside as they were setting up, the aisle of the church had been decorated with a number of beautiful arches that had been set up that were again draped in these blue fabrics, blue and yellow flowers. So all these arches all the way down the aisle to the front. And it's a very dramatic chapel, and we'll share photos of it so you can see it. But it looked very pollen coloured. And that's not me just wanting a Polin wedding. We'll touch on to this later. But it was very surreal. And there was also chairs that I spotted that looked like the ones that the Queen sits in. So it meant that the Queen could maybe be in attendance at this function. They were kind of fancy, who knows? And then also it's like a 2-tiered chapel, and it looked like more flowers had been hung all along the sides. So they decorated it absolutely beautifully. And with those blue drapes that we saw being set up as well, they've really dressed it to be this gorgeous, very pollen coded event.
Yes. Also, we should mention that the interior of the chapel is gold and blue. It's very pollen coated.
The ceiling is stunning. The ceiling of the chapel is, it's like blue and gold, and it's utterly beautiful. And it's just the perfect place to get married. So I went back the next morning and they were setting up for filming, but I returned late that evening and I got there just as a ton of extras were leaving the chapel. So the chapel doors opened and they all poured out, all in wedding clothes. There was a lot of people that hadn't barriered the whole thing off like they had previously, so people could watch what was going on from a different angle this time. And basically the whole place was flooded with all these extras who were leaving set for the day, and it was so strange because they were all dressed in blues and greens. Veg, I know in the last block you said there was a lot of blues and greens there, but there seemed to be even more blues and greens on set this time. And what I will say is I'm making this sound like it's definitely a Polin wedding, but I've personally never been that desperate for a Polin wedding. I would love a Polin wedding, but it's never been something that I desperately need to have. So I'm not wedded to the idea of it, but it just definitely looked like one. And then also who came out of the chapel, I saw Nick and Neets. of all people.
Very excited.
I have to say, Newt appeared to be in costume. Veg, what did my blurry phone photo look like?
Well, this was a true blur, but with obs on the ground reporting and much analysis later on, we determined a few things we were certain of. Firstly, Edward was a vampire.
I was irrevocably in love with him.
Secondly, the photos looked lighter than the reality. In actuality, Luke was wearing a very dark suit. And then I looked back on the Reddit post, and Lecky was quick to point out that it kind of looked like he was wearing a suit with a buttonhole corsage or a boutonniere.
Boutonniere.
And this made us clown so hard that we could 100% have been exploited by P.T. Barnum.
Oh.
Absolutely amazing.
We were clowning, but we were zooming in, looking for any clue we could find. So it's possible.
I wouldn't say 100%, but it kind of looked like he was. But it was very, very dark. But then, a little while later, someone else came out of the chapel. Dun, dun, dun. It was Nicola. And how it was... I don't know why I'm asking you, Veg, how Nicola was looking in my mind, but she exists now only in my memory.
Yeah, it's been conveyed to me.
Thank you, thank you.
So we think Nick had changed out of whatever outfit she was in, we believe, or it was being covered.
Either that or Pen's wearing a big dressing gown.
Yeah, she was wearing a very big white coat, dressing gown,
Like a robe.
which was initially like, oh my god, it's white. But, then we paused for a second, saw sense. Anyway, but you could see her hair, and it was mostly down with a little up, but it seemed to be very long, lovely big waves. I don't think it's poodle pen, but there is a bit of a hint of that.
I've always disagreed about the poodle pen, but Obs was there in person, so I can't really disagree with her firsthand account.
In the moment, it looked...
Poodly.
I will say, I told you at the time that her hair was very, very tightly curled. And it was like piled on top of her hair. It was tightly curled in places, but what I will say is maybe they like pinned parts of, like, if I do like this now to like pin back my hair, it looks super, super curled.
Yeah.
Maybe just to get her back to the hair and makeup trailer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe I said that. I said that they probably had them pinned, and a lot of the wigs were held up in like nets.
Yeah.
And when it's pushed up in that net, it looks curlier than it is.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But I have to say that the back of it still didn't look as loose as I would have thought.
Okay.
I was going to say, or there's like a compromise where Pen gets the wedding dress she wants, but Portia gets to style her hair.
Yeah, I was going to say, did Portia do the wedding hair? It did look gorgeous, though, I think, still. Like,
Yeah.
To provide a little context over all this toing and froing over Penelope's curls, way back in February 2023, we had almost zero knowledge of how Penelope would be styled in Season 3, beyond a few very tiny, very blurry glimpses of wavy red hair. We suspected her poodle hair would soften from the tight curls into a much looser, more romantic style, so it was a bit of a shock when we saw that Penelope's hair actually appeared much curlier in the wedding lakes. When we then recorded this episode in January, we had more context for Pen's hair journey, but even then the wedding look did still seem curlier than, for example, the Moonlight Pen from To Doom. Now we have actually seen Pen's hair for her wedding, and we see how it is inspired by the lush Hollywood curls as we've seen throughout Season 3. Mystery solved, clowns stand down.
So Nicola and Luke were leaving set, but again, couldn't really see their costuming. Again, kind of failed on the old Crumbs match again. But it was super exciting to see some of the production taking place. And the next day I had the day off, so I went to watch some filming again. Again, like Greenwich is very accessible for this. They just kind of cordon off the bits they need, and then passers-by and students just stand all day and just watch it. It's quite common. Interestingly, I met a few people from the fandom that day, including Love at First Sight. Who was it? Vegetable. This was our moment of meeting.
We have a video of this. It's funny. We have this moment on camera, their first meeting, their mute cute.
How many people can say that?
yeah, can we put the audio in?
We can share it.
Yeah.
Or anything from Reddit, by the way, so hello, that's me.
Hi. Oh my god, hi, Veg.
True love. A beautiful, beautiful day. And Veg, we hung out together, didn't we? And we saw some of the filming taking place. I think you came along later in the day.
I did. I was like, I had about an hour and I had to leave to go on a date with my boyfriend, and I was like, leave me it to the last minute. I think it was his birthday as well.
Oh no.
An unimportant date.
Priorities.
Veg here. Looking back, I think I made the right decision going to look at Crumbs.
So basically what was happening on this day, they were filming there the whole day. I arrived like halfway through kind of thing. And they were definitely filming in the chapel all day long. They had tons and tons of extras who were dressed in like wedding attire. Again, it was like very green, very blues as the palette. And the chapel doors was being open and closed constantly because people coming in and out. So they'd have moments where they'd let all the extras out, and then all the extras would file back in, and they were doing like to's and fro's and things like that.
Yeah.
Again, it was quite cold. They had like wraps over some of their costumes and stuff like that. But as the doors were opening and then closing, you could kind of peek inside the chapel. I didn't have the best view, but there was a paparazzi person who did have a better view than I did. And if you look through the tiniest glimpse of the door, you could see some interesting things. But before we get into the chapel, Lecky, what else was going on outside? What did we see?
We kind of touched on this in our last episode, but there were a ton of redheaded extras on set.
They really were.
Including some redheaded flower girls, one of whom we believe was actually mistaken for Pen briefly because she was seen in that doorway you mentioned. She's wearing a white dress and she has red hair, so people thought Pen, but she looks kind of like a flower girl. And then Veg, you also spotted something interesting. I went through our old chat and Beans shared this with us, but you saw a container of something. What was it?
Yeah. So it was like petals.
Like confetti?
Or confetti, but they were petal shaped, loose, blue and like yellow.
So romantic.
That's surreal, isn't it?
I know. Oh, so exciting.
That is surreal. Just to clarify with the redheaded flower girls that, like you say, Lecky, this has gone around quite a lot, this photo. I promise you, it definitely isn't Pen, this photo. They were like, I don't know, 7 and 9 years old, these two little flower girls. So maybe some Featherington relations. And, you know, it makes sense that if Pen is marrying Bridgerton, that, you know,
Portia would turn out. Yep.
Portia is getting out the old phone book. She's calling every single Featherington in the land, and they descended upon Greenwich.
Yeah.
Also spotted by other fans and passers-by, Will and Florence were spotted in costuming for a wedding. But then through the door, as I said, you could see cast going up and down as they were resetting and doing things like that. And a few of the main cast were spotted by me, but a lot by others as well. So interestingly, Luke Thompson was spotted in very groomsman attire, like a dark blue, like a navy blue, very Colin blue, I have to say, with like a tight cravat, with a boutonniere, like a little corsage. So he looked like he was part of the wedding party. There was also Prudhank, both of them. Beans, you were soaring through with the angels, weren't you, my darling?
I sure was.
So you could see that Bessie Carter Prudence was dressed in a very blue costuming. So it definitely wasn't her wedding because she was definitely like not in a bridal outfit, but very, very blue, which is an unusual colour for us to see her in. And then followed behind her was James Foon, who plays Zanquith. I will say, I was convinced that this was Luke Newton. And I posted that. I was like, look, here it is. Alas, it was not. Embarrassing. It was not. But what was interesting about Danquith's costume is that he also had a very, very similar costume to what Benedict was wearing. And it looked as if he was also part of the wedding party. So if we're thinking about whose wedding this is going to be, right? Who else's wedding would it make sense that Danquith would be in a wedding party with Benedict? If Prudhank are married at this point, then obviously it would make sense for him to be like a brother-in-law, just as Benedict would be a brother-in-law. And then Jonathan Bailey was also spotted leaving set. Also, I saw Polly, Adjua, Daniel Francis, and other cast members, including new actors Genevieve Chanel. And then I saw another person, and Veg, you had tipped me off on this in block 3 because finally we saw Victor Ali, and this made me absolutely convinced that Victor was going to be playing the character of John. I think another fan identified it as Victor Ali. And when he was leaving set, there was just something about his like qualities that really like stood out as John to me. Like, I've got a photo of him smiling, and it just like, do you know when you see like a character and you're like, oh my god, that is the character. That's like perfectly how you imagine him. And so it was so exciting to see him leaving set. He wasn't in costume, interestingly. But yeah, a whole bunch of characters leaving the chapel. But where was the groom himself?
Well.
Did we get a sneak peek?
Yeah, we very much did. So there was a sighting on one of the times that the door was opened. It's just a sliver of door, but that's all we needed. People were analysing sideburns and comparing them with this morning leaks. Literally, I found on the subreddit there was like someone had done a side by side of the shape of the sideburn.
Not surprising.
It was probably one of you guys.
Probably me.
So Luke was wearing a suit, of course, and we're not 100% on this because others were seen in more of a silvery hue, so it could have been something with the lighting. But the waistcoat he had on was definitely like yellow tinged.
It was definitely yellowy. Come on.
To me, it does look similar to sort of the formal wear that they wore a lot in like season 2, that kind of thing. Like similar to Anthony's wedding, but that just adds fuel to the wedding theory fire. And the shirt is billowy, flouncy, floaty. He's got a couple of ruffles on it, but he also has like a black necktie on that.
Yeah, he does.
Is this a bow tie, guys?
It's weird because it's like not like a full cravat, so I think it could be a bow tie.
But it's not quite, is it?
What does Anthony wear at his wedding?
The boys at Anthony's wedding are wearing like your classic penguin black suit, like your classic tux.
I don't know.
What I'll say is, in comparison to that wedding, this, like, when you look at Benedict and Dankworth and Colin, I think it's dark blue.
Yeah.
I don't think they're wearing black. I think they're dressed in blues, like a very
maybe more
deep
playful.
blue.
And you said, did you say ruffles? That's also kind of like a little romantic.
Yeah, little flounce, And Lecky, you remember this because I compared this, the kind of the dark blue, the yellow vest. Where have we seen this before?
Young Colin in season 2, episode 3. Young Colin is wearing a really, really similar outfit.
That's true. And I'd love it to be, it wasn't like bright yellow, but it definitely looked yellow. So we think, again, we could be completely wrong, could be completely delusional. We think we have a glimpse of groom Colin taken by, I think it was like a paparazzi that was on set. But there were also rumours of a Penn wedding dress being seen. Now, I will say this has never been substantiated. There has never been a photo been released. Yeah. I'm personally glad that I never saw it because I wouldn't have wanted the mental burden of, should I share it? Because it's almost like too far, isn't it? Like to leak a wedding dress. Yeah. So I never saw it, but there were rumours of it. Yeah. And I think they basically just said it was white. It's like, oh, okay, like shocking development. But so a full day of filming, like I say, people coming in and out. And then at the end of the day, everyone was leaving set and the crew were trying to avoid the main cast being spotted, but did get a glimpse of Nick leaving set again. But she was not in costume. But you could see the tiniest little peak of a pen wig, like a little pen curl, like squiggling down her back. Yeah. But that was it for the wedding. It was so exciting though. But then the next day they had the pack down with all the interior decoration was visible. Veg, were you here with me at this point?
Yes.
When we saw the pack down. And they emptied the whole of the chapel and there were so many huge displays of blue and yellow flowers in vases. So again, reiterating that this was a big wedding that was taking place. So do we think that's what it was, guys? Do we think this was the Polin wedding?
100%. Yep.
And if so, it's falling in episode 7 and 8.
Yep.
We have the colour schemes. We have the fact that it looks like the wedding party outfits.
Red-headed extras.
They need to get married at some point,
Yep.
There is a hint of doubt, though.
There always has been a hint of doubt.
We've said this before. It's a bit uncanny valley. There's something off about it. Why is it so big? I don't know.
Right.
It just doesn't sit right.
I always, from day one, and I was like told off by some people because I've always had the weirdest feeling that there is something at the wedding that isn't quite right.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Penelope is not entirely happy. She's happy to marry him, right? Obviously, because, by this point, they're together. But there's something about it that makes me think, like, she's not too thrilled about it. And that would make sense. If she's not happy for whatever reason, it would make sense as to why, like, the wedding's, like, almost happening around her in terms of, like, her hair isn't quite how she'd want it. And it's very, very opulent. So I have a few theories to put out to you about what could possibly be going on. Because, interestingly, Claudia Jessie was never seen on set. So a lot of people have taken this as Eloise is refusing to go to the wedding, or potentially Eloise is distracted by something else and can't get to the wedding. Maybe she's trying to sort something out behind the scenes. But as Beans, you were saying earlier, just because someone isn't seen on set absolutely doesn't mean that they were not there at all, right?
Yep.
So a couple of theories about this wedding. It could be that the reason it's so big and dramatic and flamboyant is because Portia is running rampant with the decoration. I think, Veg, you thought this earlier. And maybe Polin at this point are just too in love that they just don't really care and they're just too happy and they're like, let the mamas get on with it and do it however they want. So Portia just really takes the lead and it's like a really comedic moment where she's just kind of going with it. It could be that, like I say, Penn is maybe not too happy for some reason about the marriage. Maybe the threat of Whistledown is still hanging over them and she's still worried about Colin. Or could it be that Colin is making the wedding a huge deal as a way to protect Penn from the threat of the Queen or the blackmail plot? So if, for example, Penn is being blackmailed at this point, it kind of ties into a moment in the books where Colin mentions that once they're married, she'll be under his protection. And it's linking a lot back to what recent interviews have said about them using their power as to whether Colin will allow this huge wedding to take place as like a public way to show that Penelope is under the Bridgerton protection now.
Interesting.
What are you guys thinking?
I feel like Portia will be so excited to have one of her own marry into the Bridgertons that she's going to make this a big spectacle. I feel like you said, Colin will be too in love to care. I do think that Penn might pick and choose her battles because, like you said, maybe she will keep a little bit of the poodle hair, but her dress will be her own. Maybe Violet behind the scenes will push for her, and Jen work with her to get what she wants. I want it to be a happy wedding.
Do you think it's going to be like a quick wedding scene? Like, we're not going to spend too much time at the church. Do you think it's going to be like a happy marriage? Like, it goes off without a hitch. Maybe akin to what happens with Daphne's wedding, as opposed to it being like a whole episode that we saw in season 2.
Yeah, maybe a couple comic beats just because of how many redheads there are. Like, it would be really funny if they have, like, the shot of the church and then, like, just one whole side of the church is filled just with redheads from wall to wall or something, you know?
Yeah. I felt like I finally belonged. And is there any chance that this isn't a Polin wedding, do you think?
I don't think so.
I'm pretty certain it is. Are you thinking episode 7 or episode 8?
I feel like 7, because I feel like to deal with the Lady Whistledown drama, they need to be a united front, and this is kind of the last linking of them together as a couple.
Yeah.
So to face that final drama, they need to do it together. They need to be Bridgertons.
And they might turn to the Bridgertons in episode 8, and then that might shape how the Bridgertons view Penelope as Lady Whistledown, because she's one of them at that point.
Yeah.
And that's how they are. They look after each other.
Yeah.
And then it would make sense if episode 6 is very tied up with engagement stuff.
Yeah.
That then it follows the next story beat is the wedding. So that was what we think is a Polin wedding. Please let us know if you think it is or not. But then a few days later, just a couple of crumbs to sweep up along the way. The 17th of February, Nicola was interviewed by The Standard, and she said that they were deep into filming and that this had been one of the best experiences of my life. I'm really sad thinking of it being over, but also happy I can finally sleep.
Poor thing.
Poor Nicola, she was doubling up filming. Big mood at this point, I think.
Crazy.
So she was happy but tired. And then the 18th of February, Jack Murphy posted a picture of an empty rehearsal room with the word done, with the caption, "It's going to be worth the wait." So fans took this, that they'd finished either rehearsing the last ball or that they had finished filming the last ball. So we really got the sense that things were starting to wrap up now.
Yeah.
And then later in February, Nicola Coughlan was interviewed by Vogue at the BAFTAs, and she said about the season is written so beautifully. I think people are going to relate to it so much. The way they've crafted this love story, it's got so much heart, which is something that we've continued to hear. You know, fair enough, they can have a nice, beautiful wedding, because who can deny them that? But then kids, my step counter was going through the roof at this point in time, because the 20th of February, we're going back to Greenwich. It's a good job I live near you, Veg, because we had some more filming taking place on location. Beans, where are we going?
Well, we made a return to Ranger's house.
We did indeed.
And again, just to refresh your memories, Ranger's house is usually where they filmed the front portion of Bridgerton. That's where we see the iconic wisteria.
Yeah.
And the last time we'd seen Ranger's house being filmed at this season was in Block 1, literally for episode 1, where we first saw Pirate Colin. So, yeah, you know the drill. It's a Bridgerton exterior.
And it's also holy ground for Polin fans. But this time there was a brand new addition in the form of a very large fence.
Yeah, they're not too pleased about the previous set leaks with the Pirate Colin leaks, our holy grail. So a large fence had been put up to try and prevent future leaks from taking place. Oh dear. But some initial filming over at Ranger's house, it looked like it was the second unit that was up there. So they were doing establishing shots. So, you know, the scenes where the extras walk past the Bridgerton house and things like that. Maybe pickups for other episodes that you're going to see interspersed throughout the season. And we think that the main cast at the time were over at Uxbridge, busy filming over there. But then we had a little red herring, didn't we, Lek?
On the 22nd of February, an Instagram user posted that they believed Bridgerton was filming at a church in Limehouse, accompanied by a picture of a carriage. Naturally, Obbs felt compelled to investigate by boat. And we will also share a video of this, by the way.
Yeah, so, like the fucking clown I am, I think it was a Facebook post, and they said that it was Bridgerton that was filming. I was very new to the area, just moved to London, so I plugged the address into my phone, and I was walking, and stupidly went to the river, and it was like, get on a boat now. And I was like, get on a fucking what now? And it's like, you either get in a boat or you swim, babe, if you want to get across there.
She messaged us and she's like, why not? What's the worst that could happen?
So I was on a boat, crossing through the Thames. It was an Uber boat. Londoners were like, oh, grow up, it's not that big deal.
It is a big deal. It's like £7.
Well, I had no money at the time. Do you remember, Lecky? I was sending you a screenshot of my bank balance.
Yeah, anxiety inducing.
And I was like, there was not much money in there. And I also got horrifically lost. So off I went to it was like this random church. And it was not Bridgerton. It was the hit TV show Belgravia. So I'd spent all evening traipsing across for absolutely fuck all. I mean, you could walk into the church and see everything. A lot of churches going on. You could see the carriages. It's the complete wrong era of carriages. It's like late Victorian.
Yeah.
So got on a boat for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
And then couldn't find her way home for a long time. That made me very very, very nervous.
No, you were in LA trying to like coordinate an international rescue mission.
I was trying to see if I can get an Uber for you. Yeah, that was difficult.
Because I was like, I don't know where I am. I was like, I don't have any money to get home. So that wasn't my most successful endeavour, but I did have more success because on the 24th of February, we got word that there was filming over at somewhere called Woburn Walk near Euston in London. So there was a lot of confusion over this filming because it was in a very public street. So there was like tons and tons and tons of photographs being shared online. People being like, oh, something's being filmed. But people didn't think it was Bridgerton because like the production code was completely wrong. But, you know, I felt compelled to investigate, boots on the ground. So where did I get sent to, Beans?
Oh, you were sent off to Woburn Walk near Euston.
Woburn.
Woburn.
You were sent off to Woburn Walk near Euston. The street was actually one of the first pedestrian shopping streets in the Regency era and is still really well preserved. So it was a perfect location for Bridgerton to film an actual shopping street in the Regency.
It's a really beautiful area, but like you say, it's very well preserved, so it steps in quite nice. But they did dress the street a little bit, right? Like,
Yeah, so they kind of made it look like a little small marketplace, and it's lined with these Regency shops and market stalls for things like flowers and Grecian busts and pottery, and there's all sorts of townspeople strolling through. And at the end of the walkway, the street kind of opened up to this gravel road where we saw carriages and people riding by on horseback. But that's not all we saw, is it, Obs?
It's not all we saw. So I will say that you could actually go onto the set because the way that they cordoned it off, it was like still publicly accessible.
Yeah.
So passers-by were allowed to walk literally through the set when they were not filming.
Crazy.
And then they would just, all that would happen is when they were ready to film, the crew would just say, hey, everyone, can you just get behind the barriers? They're like, you can still watch filming and everything like that, don't worry, but just don't be in the shot. So when you're watching this in the actual show, just know there was tiny little obs just like in the corner. But I saw, Beans, reduce, reuse, recycle. I saw a dress that Violet had won in the previous season that was on an extra. So this was how I knew that this definitely was the show, because I recognised it from Violet's class dress.
Thank God. Thank God for reduce, reuse, recycle.
Thank God, it saved us. So we knew we were in the right show, we knew we were in the right era. And basically they were filming the same scene over and over again. Veg, you talked about this last block, about how they just kind of reset and then shoot it and then reset and shoot it. So it took me a little while to figure out what was going on. And basically I have the video of this, and it's like the closest thing we have to a clip from season 3. Like, it's like actual footage.
This looks like a real scene.
It really does.
So cool.
So basically what's happening, like I say, it's a shopping street. The townspeople are just milling about. It's all very calm. Everyone's very, very leisurely. And then suddenly this character storms through the street and he looks really annoyed. He looks like very determined. He looks like he's on a mission.
Yeah, he didn't look annoyed. He just looked determined to me.
Like, he determined, but like the way he was walking was like very fast and quick. And if you think they're so about propriety and stuff like this, that it would be very out of place for a character to be publicly acting like this.
He does look a little concerned.
I would say he's annoyed.
I feel like he's dealing with some drama and there's an urgent situation that he's trying to resolve.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's it. There's an urgency.
Yeah.
There's an urgency. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Like, there's something urgent in the way his expression is. And who was this? It was Victor, Ali, John Sterling. So this was a scene that was being filmed on repeat, and I'll share it. But basically, we have this scene that's presumably taking place in episode 7 or 8, where for some reason John is very urgently walking through the ton. Who knows what's going on? Could it be some Fran drama towards the end of the season?
I feel like once Fran gets their happy ending, I don't think they want to like have a lot of drama in their relationship just because it ends so tragically. So I wonder if this is like a scene where also he's part of the Bridgerton family and he's kind of like helping them resolve this situation with Lady Whistledown. And maybe because he's kind of a new member of the Bridgerton family and kind of like conspicuous, maybe they send him to do something. You know what I mean? Maybe they send him to chat with Jen or something like that, because like there's some sort of drama going down with the Lady Whistledown reveal or, you know, blackmail plot.
Something that I don't want to rule out is perhaps it was a pickup.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it was for an earlier episode.
Could have been.
Editor's note, not only was Beans right about this being a pickup, but upon reviewing this footage that Obs captured, we also realized that she did manage to snap a photo of Hannah Dodd, so we do have a picture of Fran and Victor Ali on set during this scene.
Maybe he's storming off to ask Fran to marry him, and it's from one of the earlier episodes. You know, like he hears something and he's like...
Maybe.
I don't know, but I will say that like scene made me really excited, and I'm so excited to see how it's gonna look when we actually like see it, because I think it's gonna look so good, because the street really did look very beautiful. And I will note that they used some of the previous props as well from when they were at Old Royal Naval College.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
The market stalls.
yeah, the market stalls were the same. Yeah.
And I went back the next day after they packed it up, and you'd never even known they were there. Like, the attention to detail they put as a production is crazy.
Yeah.
But there we go, a little bit of John, a few seconds of actual footage.
Oh, also, wait, he's wearing like medium blue. Like, he's wearing like Bridgerton blue. Maybe he's part of the Bridgerton family at that time.
Yeah.
We now know that John is not part of the Bridgerton family at this point in the season, but you can see that he and Fran are wearing complementary colors. He's wearing this bluish gray jacket, and her dress is shot through with gray. Her blue jacket also has gray stripes all over it, so we're seeing their love story and their arcs kind of represented in their clothing as well.
I have a theory that the sterling colours, for obvious reasons, are going to be grey. And this will come up in a minute, actually, when we talk about the carriage. And I think when Fran marries him, as again, we'll see in the leaks, that her palette becomes like a steely, icy blue.
Ooh.
If you put like grey and blue together, it's like ice blue, which is what we see her in later. But yeah, if his palette shifts as well from grey into like a blue.
He's wearing blue. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, hold on to your horses, kids, because we're off back to Ranger's house for some very special crumbs, some very special blurs.
Speaking of Obbs's boating adventures and trips across London, that's not the only commute Obbs made in search of crumbs that winter.
No. So this was all kind of happening in the same week. And I had a weird little feeling that although they were still filming in Euston, so they were filming more like shopping scenes and stuff like that, I had a weird feeling that there was going to be something going on at Ranger's house.
Yeah.
Completely just like a beans tingle.
A titty tingle.
What can you say? And so what was going on? I saw like Bridgerton footmen and stuff like that, like staff just outside, like not really doing much, just kind of milling around a little bit. And then it was the most surreal thing I think I'll ever experience in my life. Basically, you had Violet, Benedict, Colin, Penelope, Gregory, and Hyacinth just standing and waving goodbye. Yeah. We'll share it. It was really fucking weird. And they were waving. And basically this scene was a rehearsal scene because Luke Newton had this like a hair clip in and they weren't like properly wearing their costumes and stuff like that. So they were just rehearsing and I was like, oh my fucking God, like that's literally like a perfect framing. And then actually like they were filming the scene that I'd seen of them waving, right? And what I saw was Fran and John were like walking down the Bridgerton steps and they were going towards a carriage. And then behind them, Violet, Benedict, Colin, Penelope, Gregory and Hyacinth, there were maybe other people, like the way it's framed, like there could have been other people I just couldn't see, stepped up behind them and were just waving goodbye. And the best thing about this all, more than anything, right, is that there was what we believed to be a sighting of married Polin because Colin was there, he was more visible, but next to him, there was a tiny little...
tiny glimpse.
It's such a small pixel that you couldn't see Nicola behind like a tiny like bit of red hair.
Yeah, you could just see her hair, basically.
But this is what we call pixel Polin. And the reason we think they're married is because they're literally standing next to each other, like probably like holding hands or something, we can see, but they're standing completely next to each other outside the Bridgerton house. Like obviously they're together. And we basically think that this is episode 8 and they're saying goodbye to Fran and John. So married Polin, there you go.
Yes, so Colin is beaming and Pen is a disembodied head. But everyone looks happy, though Fran looks like she's off to study at Beauxbaton. She looks like she's Fleur Delacour in Harry Potter.
And Veg, I said that we could see a very pixelated Pen and Colin, but how are they looking?
Rejoice. So in the first look that you lovingly provided for us, we can see Luke wearing his very famous hair clip again. The dedication to the hair swoosh this season is very impressive, and we thank the hair team very much for their hard work. And we've talked about it before a bit, but Hyacinth and Violet have also got like protective covers over their hair and wigs as well.
Gotta keep them curls good.
And then, of course, we caught the glimpse of red. We knew our blurry prayers had been answered. Little happy married Polin. And as you said, we can't see a lot. But on Pen's head, what we also can't see is a big pile of poodle curls.
Oh, victory.
And Colin is wearing a suit one more time for luck. And we can see that there's some sort of dark thing around his neck.
Like a little cravat.
And to be honest, who gives a damn?
It's not super tight. It's like more relaxed, right?
Yeah, we should be damn happy for this crumb. I don't care if he's wearing a duck on his head or a swan. All right, I don't care. Married Polin. Thank you, Obs, for your service.
Editor's note, like Mama Peach's, Veg had dipped at this point. It was a long recording session.
As they're all saying goodbye to Fran, Violet turns to Colin and Pen, and Colin kind of turns to Violet, and they just have this really sweet moment where they just kind of like look at each other, don't they?
I'm gonna weep.
I mean, unless Colin is holding Pen's head on a spike, which we're not ruling out.
It's definitely a possibility.
There could be an execution. It looks like this is proof that the Bridgertons have embraced Pen into the family.
Yes. This picture has given me so much peace of just married Polin happily together, Pen with the Bridgerton family.
Outside the Bridgerton house.
I don't care how blurry it is. This is the best photo ever.
Are they a blur? Yes, but they are our blurs. So later on, the main cast had gone, but there was what I think is basically the Sterling carriage, and also seemed as if it was laden with luggage, so as if, again, they were leaving. The carriage looks grey, which is a colour that I associate with the Sterlings. I really think it's going to be like the grey colour.
Yeah.
And a paparazzi who... I'm certainly not, had a drone, which I certainly did not have.
And don't necessarily condone.
Don't condone. And he got a clearer shot of Fran leaving with John. So he didn't get like Colin or Pen or anything, but he saw Fran and John and Eloise. So I kind of got a shot of Eloise, but this was much clearer. And it almost looks as if Eloise is leaving with Fran and John.
Yeah.
So Francesca was, as you say, doing her best Fleur Delacour impression with this sort of like icy blue travelling cloak, but it also kind of looked as if Eloise was wearing a similar travel cloak as well, which added to the theory that she was leaving with John and Fran.
Yeah.
But late that night, production was still rolling on. What was going on, Lex?
So during a night shoot, Lady Danbury's carriage was spotted at Ranger's house, and it looked like several people were entering the building. Some people suspected that this could maybe be a ball hosted at the Bridgerton house.
Yeah, so they weren't filming a ball inside, obviously, because that's not how they use it, but as if they were all going in, because all the lights were like blaring and everything. So a possible Bridgerton hosted ball towards the end, episode 7, episode 8.
Lots of people think this could be the ball that perhaps sets up Benedict's season. Maybe a little masquerade, perhaps.
A little masquerade.
Ooh. In retrospect, we believe that people could possibly be arriving for Polin's engagement ball. But Benefit fans, we're hoping that this might actually be a little masquerade for you.
Maybe Colin doing a bit of a declaration, perhaps, as well.
Yeah, you could tie them both together. Yeah.
With a cravat, probably. That was all the filming at Ranger's house. So what do we think was going on? With that early scene, as we speculated, it looks as if what's going to happen is at the end of the season, probably towards episode 8, I'm thinking of that moment that is kind of a combination of the scene in The Duke and I, where Daphne and Simon were leaving, and a combination of the end of 108 when Colin is leaving.
Yes.
So it's a familiar scene to us in terms of that way. So it looks as if Fran and John are leaving, possibly going back up to Scotland, and the rest of the family come out to wave goodbye. But do you agree that Eloise is going to leave with them?
I think so.
If that is what's going to happen, do we think this is going to be like a very bittersweet ending for Peneloise? Do you think they're leaving bitterly?
No, I don't think it's a bitter ending. I think it's bittersweet in that we'll probably wait for the bulk of the season for them to reconcile. And then once they do, Pen has this happy ending. She's, she's united with Colin. They're married. They've kind of become their own duo. And the duo of Peneloise, they kind of part ways. It's kind of like the new right? Yeah, the new role in their lives where they're friends again, but they're kind of diverging on different paths in their own ways. They'll still be close, but it's different than before. So that's kind of why I think it's a little bittersweet.
And maybe Eloise is leaving because she wants some alone time.
That's
She's like,
possible.
Well, I mean, it is literally canon that Eloise stumbling upon it is canon that Eloise fled to the countryside because she stumbled upon Polin in their house one day and was too traumatized to continue. I wonder if what it's going to be is like a tinging of bittersweet, but I think they're going to be fully reconciled.
No, I agree.
New form of their relationship, like they're sisters now.
It's just sad because it's not the same. It's they're friends, but it's different.
Yeah, and you're never going to go back to it, but it's healthy because their friendship by the end.
Yeah, I agree.
It was untenable. I wonder if Eloise is going to be almost inspired to go off and be like, I want my own story now.
Maybe.
Like, you've got your story as part of our family.
I like that.
But yeah, good luck to Fran and John. They're going to have Eloise chattering all the way to Scotland.
I feel like this is a good place to mention that you also saw the swings at the back of Ranger's house. So there may be an Eloise Benedict scene that kind of happens maybe before she goes off on this new journey.
This concluded the filming up at Ranger's, but they started to pack down. The house itself is used by runners and stuff, so they have to like make it accessible very quickly. So you could see the set still up close whilst it was actually like the Bridgerton set. So you could see obviously all the flowers, it was very beautiful, the stone insets that are on the house itself. But you could also see that the swings were visible, which means means that we're definitely going to return to maybe another Ben and Elle swing scene in season 3 at some point. Maybe even other siblings could use the swings, who knows. But then Beans, my darling Beans, also visible was our beloved bench. Maybe not beloved by us on this pod, but beloved by you.
Yeah.
Other bits and bobs, though, around this time, an article was published by the Daily Telegraph where Julia Quinn addressed the dark sex plot rumours and rumours of rewrites, saying there was no truth to it. And also around Valentine's Day, we believe that they were filming over at Claydon House. And this, again, was the start of the long 6-day work weeks. And Jack Murphy was on set, so it's likely that a ball or a big event of some kind was being filmed over at Claydon. On the 21st of February, at a writers' festival, Julia Quinn spoke about season 3, and she said that, I've been reading the scripts for season 3, and there's some lines in there, and I feel like season 3 is pulling more lines from the actual book than season 2 did. She also joked that she couldn't recognise some lines because it'd been so long since she'd written them, but confirmation that this season is going to be far more heavily influenced by certain parts of the book than maybe we have seen in previous seasons.
Yeah.
On the 2nd of March, Luke Newton celebrated Colin's birthday because that is his birthday. The boy's a Pisces. Well, book Colin is a Pisces. We know that show Colin cannot be a Pisces too, but it was book Colin's 232nd birthday last year, and he will be turning the big 233 in the upcoming March.
233.
It wasn't happy, it was happily.
Oh, that's right. I remember this. Happily birthday, Colin.
He was so excited that you couldn't say it right.
Happy birthday to you.
But very close to the end of filming now, and on the 8th of March, we went back to Basildon again, it does seem. So Tom Verica was over at Basildon.
It was super cold.
It looked like they were going to try and film outside.
Yeah.
Because Nicola commented, get the hairdryers out, which was a reference to a previous season when they'd had to literally try and clear the snow by melting it by hand. So it looks as if they were filming exterior over at Basildon, which again has been the Featherington house. Maybe a full circle moment for Colin, maybe returning there in the last episodes, the scene of his season 2 crime, a big declaration, or maybe standing in for something else. On the 8th of March, Luke posted a reel which has stayed in our minds rent-free ever since, in which he said that you are not ready, alluding to how differently Colin is going to look at Penelope in the upcoming season.
At the time, I felt ready. But as time has gone on, I feel increasingly less ready.
My bones feel ready. Like my bones feel ready. I mean, Beans is like laid out on her bed. That's how tired she is.
I'm on my floor now.
Oh my gosh, listeners, you won't see this because we'll chop the episode down, but we've been here for
quite a while.
2.5 hours. But finally, Beans, we're here. We made it.
Yep.
The final weekend of filming. They were splitting their time trying to finish everything. So they were over at Uxbridge in the studios, but they were also somewhere else. And you would think that the mysteries had finally ceased, but alas, they had not. Beans, which location are we going to today for our final season 3 Crumbs?
The final and last known on-location shoot took place at Blenheim. Yeah?
Yep.
Who wrote that?
I wrote that for her.
Thank you.
Oh, Blecky.
Well, I didn't know how to pronounce it like months ago, and you told me it was Blenheim, and I was like, Blenheim? And I'm like, Beans will never guess this either.
Absolutely not.
You were correct.
It's going to be Blenheim.
Yeah,
100%. Jinx. Blenheim Palace from the 10th to the 12th of March, and on the 12th it was the last and final day of filming. We believe this is a new location for Bridgerton, though the location was used in Queen Charlotte. There were other extras on set along with staff for the palace, and Queen Charlotte was seen filming with her Pomeranian puppies there as well. There's a hilarious article about this with a photograph of all of the dogs on set for season 3. Also, the dogs are apparently all rescue dogs, which is so cute.
I know, I loved that. One of the names of the dogs, by the way, in the article, it's hilarious. It's like Mimi, Jane, so-and-so, and then the last one is Spy.
Sounds like they were planted.
I promise you, we didn't plant a little spy dog on set.
Maybe next season.
But it is hilarious that one of our only glimpses of like this location was taken for these dogs.
So like in true season 3 fashion, there was one final set leak for us to squint over, spiral over, and be haunted by forever in the form of another, very true to form, mysterious carriage.
Yes.
It's the same shade as Colin's dark blue carriage, but with some new additions. Now, if you look at this carriage, it's like the colour is the same, but the curtains look blue instead of golden yellow, and most fascinatingly of all, there is a crest that we've never seen before, and it's so distressing.
We have reached out to Latin experts.
I've consulted Latin experts, consulted crest experts. I offered to pay someone on the Photoshop subreddit.
Sometimes these things happen, when I'm at work and I have to like catch up later and be like, what the hell were you all doing all day?
It's like, I remember on the subreddit, Veg like jokingly suggested what it was, and it was in Latin when you translated it. What was it?
She says, "Nos omnes pagani," and says, "We are all clowns."
Yeah, that sounds about accurate.
So basically, a lot of the theory is that this is like Colin's new carriage with a new crest. I don't know. Does that even make sense? I don't think it does.
Future Lucky here, it is the Blenheim Carriage. You're welcome, past Lucky and Obs. Well, there is another photo of the carriage. Well, I think it's the carriage outside Blenheim. And there are Featherington footmen atop this carriage. They're in the green livery. For clarity, because the footmen are visible, this carriage is very likely to belong to the Featheringtons or Colin, even though the previous one we found out belonged to the Mondriches. So if you think about it, I think after Polin is married and maybe Penn goes to see the Queen.
Ooh.
Because this is a location where the Queen was spotted filming. I definitely think this is a scene where Penelope goes to see the Queen after being married to Colin.
Like, we'll talk about this in our post-excavation, but because Golda was also seen on set, I really wonder.
I mean, how fitting. It just makes sense for their story. Go ahead. Go with your theory.
I think what might happen, right, is the Blackmail plot ramps up from Cressida, and it's putting loads and loads of pressure on them. And she's basically like, I'm going to out you. Or she's like, you're going to have to do X, Y, Z to me forever and ever.
Yeah.
And show pen is different to book pen. That's what we have to remember. They have different qualities and they've been through different experiences. I wonder if show pen is like, no, absolutely not.
I 100% agree with you. Because in the book, Colin resolves the issue. In the show, it's going to be Pen, 100%.
Yes, and I think because they both have a saviour complex, but Pen always actively does the saving, I think.
Yeah.
I think, and I've said this before about Pen sacrificing herself for the people she loves because she's made difficult decisions before.
Yeah.
I think she's going to be like, you're not blackmailing me for the rest of my life. What's going to happen is I am going to go tell the Queen myself.
Yep.
And I think she's going to go, and I don't think Colin's going to know, and I think this is going to be like the final panic of him realising that she's gone without him. And I think she's going to go and she's going to walk into the palace with her head held high. I don't think she's going to be dragged. Beans, I think you said this quite a long time ago and it's really stuck with me. I think she's going to walk in. I don't think that she's going to be dragged in, and she's going to hold her head high and she's going to say, yes,
I'm Lady Whistledown.
It's me.
Yep.
And this is who I am. And I think the Queen is going to be like, girl, I respect you.
Yeah.
I don't think the Queen is going to like the fact that someone else has tried to undercut her. I don't think the Queen is going to be like, who's been fucking around with my game?
Yeah.
We were also thinking that the Queen, she's so motivated by love that one of the reasons that she might spare Penelope, for lack of a better word, is because that she sees herself in Penelope. And
call off the guillotine.
I do think it'll be like this kind of appreciation for who Penelope is and Lady Whistledown is.
And what she's done.
But if she was at that wedding, or if she does know about this romance between Penelope and Colin by that point, that may factor in as well.
And we could have a beautiful romantic moment where Colin realises and chases her and he goes to the palace as well.
Yeah.
And then the Queen sees their love story, because that's always softens her.
Yes.
And we've said it before that the Queen doesn't hate Whistledown. She doesn't want her dead. She doesn't want her imprisoned.
Yeah.
It's a game, and I think she respects the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the big finale. And then I think the Queen is going to protect Pen from the blackmail.
Yes.
And then they'll figure out how to reconfigure Lady Whistledown as a concept for the future seasons.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say this is where they discuss what Lady Whistledown is in the future. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I really genuinely believe that is kind of the resolution. And then they go and they're happy and they can go travelling or whatever they're doing. But that is the main conflict resolved and they're together.
I think so too.
And how fitting, because that was the end of filming, because we saw a sign that said congratulations to season 3 for finishing their filming, which confirmed it even more. Nicola posted from Sec with a keychain commemorating the end. And then the next week, the cast and crew had a very, very well-earned wrap party.
Yes.
But that was the end of production. Oh my God. Beans, you wrote your final ever Chiro Crumbs. I cried.
I didn't.
I cried from laughter when Beans found this recording of this, like, someone playing the flute. It was the Sarah McLachlan song.
Yeah, Lecky put together a beautiful tribute to the Crumbs. We will share it in honour of this.
We had lost our minds by that point, I just have to say.
Lecky, I've tried to watch this time and time again to see how far I can get to without laughing and crying. Like, I sob from laughter.
Well, we were like, let's put a video together of all the Crumbs, like a little tribute to the Crumbs. And Beans was like, what if we have like progressively more unhinged versions of this song? And it's one of my favorite things I've ever made.
And it's beautiful. We'll share it. It's basically the closest thing we have to a trailer.
Yeah.
But there we go. So that was the end of filming. So Veg Beans, for the very last time, thank you for your bravery in your exploration at season 3 Crumbs. It has been a true delight. Beans, I just want to say you were a hero through this time.
Yes,
thank you.
For weeks and weeks and weeks, you bravely catalogued it. So
everything.
You are the true Crumbs queen. We owe you everything.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I had fun when I was doing it.
It was a beautiful time.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful time.
Yeah.
It was a way to keep us excited.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Just like little tiny details just kept us afloat for a long time.
Yeah.
And I used to say to you guys that when I was like living in London and like going to try and like find some crumbs, I was like, I'm only doing it to make you guys laugh.
Yeah.
And it brought us together.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have more crumbs hunting as we get the trailer and so on.
Exactly. Because Lecky, speaking of, the others are allowed to go, but you're not allowed to clock out. I'm going to kidnap you away. We've got a little bit more archaeology to do. We've got a little shift to put in before we're free. We're going to do a little more digging and then we're going to head to the lab for our post-excavation report to figure out what any of this means.
Lecky, future us here, just bobbing in. You know, now that we've seen part 1 and we're awaiting part 2, we do know a few little extra bits about production. In this episode, we talk about how they wrapped on the 10th of March. But, Lecky, that wasn't the last time they were in production for season 3, was it?
No. So we now know that they came back and did reshoots in kind of late fall, winter of 2023.
Exactly. So super late. So a whole sort of 6-7 months after the fact. If you remember, they wrapped in March, but then the writers and actors strike took place throughout pretty much the whole of summer through autumn 2023, which meant production couldn't resume. And it looks like, they came back in as late as December 2023, which at the time we did suspect something was going on. We thought they were maybe shooting promo, but as we said in our past episodes, we know that such scenes were added, such as the Willow scene was a new scene that was added. The market scene, it looks like the Tudum market was replaced by the new clock market where Pen and Colin are walking together and talking about how they first met.
We didn't mention this, but it also seems like at least one of the brothel scenes, if not both, were part of the reshoots. As you can see, Luke's tattoo was not completely covered up in one of them, a fan noticed.
So it definitely looks like the brothels were either added all together or reshot for some reason.
Yep.
Dark sex plotliners. I'm sure you're excited with that news. Who knows why they were added or reshot. And then all those little clips that were added in at the presentation, at the Livingston party, they all went to space. And who knows what else has been added to part 2. So keep your eyes out for Colin's shorter hair in part 2 to see what was filmed later. We're on hair watch.
When we thought they were shooting promo in December, it looks like they were shooting in Penelope's bedroom as well as Lady Danbury's parlor. So maybe look out for some scenes in Penelope's bedroom and in Lady Danbury's parlor in part 2.
Yeah, I suppose the interesting thing with Pen is we might have already had reshot footage, but we might not have noticed it.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of easier to blend in. But we can assume that production finally finished on the show sometime
In December.
or early January 2023.
It would be January 2024.
2024, yeah.
But I think it was December 2023.
Actually, it wasn't that long ago. Or it kind of was. I still feel like the past 6 months have gone really fast. So it feels like it's just happened. But there we go. That is finally the end of season 3 production. It's taken us almost a year, maybe about 9 months to cover the whole of production if you go back to all of our crumbs.
Yes, it's been a surprisingly busy year once we got through the bulk of it.
Like, what was your favourite crumb of all crumbs that we've covered?
My favorite crumb.
There's so many good ones.
Crabman.
Crabman. Oh,
Crabman from the Old Royal Naval College is an extra making crab hands at a fan who is taking a picture of him.
incredible. I think mine, if you're going for like niche, if you're going for like icons, Purple Velvet Colin.
Purple Velvet, not Colin.
Not Colin, was an icon of crumbs. Those were the days, weren't they? Like, oh, we're getting very nostalgic over here on the podcast. We really are. And so talking of nostalgia, how about like me and you, one last time, let's go into the lab.
Okay.
Let's get all of our crumbs, dust them off. It's been so long that the dust has got dusty.
Yeah. We also didn't have time to do like a full script for it like we usually do, but we're going to take you through what we think might happen.
These are sort of our predictions for episode 7 and episode 8 based on, we're slightly cheating because our previous post-excavation reports were based pretty much purely on the crumbs themselves. Whereas now we kind of have other information and we've seen a part of the season. So in our old Crumbs, if you go listen to them, it's basically fan fiction at this point. So this is just kind of us piecing together. So a combination of where the story's taken us so far.
Based on what we've seen in recent promo, the recent trailers, the teaser trailer.
And based on these Crumbs.
And based on these Crumbs.
So, episode 7, Joining of Hands.
Joining of hands.
Now, Lecky, it's been a while since we were in the lab, so where did we leave our episode 6 predictions?
Well, I mean, the prediction that came before is going to be very different from this one because we have new information. So in our last episode, we mentioned that we think that episode 6 will end with the Lady Whistledown reveal. So we think it may start with the fallout of the Lady Whistledown reveal, like an argument between Penelope and Colin.
Joining of Hands opens with Colin following Penelope to the printers and having that fallout of the moment she's seen him. How do we think that's going to go, Lek?
Not well.
I mean, I can't imagine he's going to be too thrilled.
No. And because we think the wedding happens in this episode, I think they need to be like polar opposite moments. So the wedding is Polin united. This is going to be a moment where we think that Polin are not going to be together anymore. It's not going to be a good argument.
So that's a big journey, right? Because within the space of one episode, we need to get from them being pretty divided to happily married if we are going to have a happy wedding. Any ideas about the tone of that initial conflict? We suspect, and something you've always championed, is that Colin's probably going to have worked it out, and that theory about Pen being Whistledown would have been solidified by the point that he got to the printer. So there's a slight different sort of power dynamic in. He isn't being completely
blindsided.
Like the shock isn't going to be the overwhelming factor of like, I had no idea this was coming.
Yep.
It's
a feeling of betrayal.
Yeah.
Deception. Yeah. Yes. So this is him for the second time realizing that he's been deceived by his fiancée. So I imagine he's not going to be too happy about it, especially because he's been so blissfully in love before this point from what we've seen in the trailers. He thinks he has found his soulmate, his perfect match, and that they understand each other perfectly.
Because they've known each other for so
yes.
long. And that's something that he couldn't get his head around with Debling, is he was like, you don't even know him. And in the clip that we've seen when he's speaking to Anthony and Ben, he's like, it has happened rather swiftly, but I've known her for so long.
Yes.
And it's the idea of,
do I really know you?
And this goes back to season 2, you know, like, you've always been so constant and loyal. This is a girl who he thinks he's always really known.
Yes.
And so for him to realise, be it quickly or slowly, that there's this part of her that he didn't know.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a big factor as to why he's so thrown by the whole situation.
Yeah, because it throws a wrench in not only how he pictured her, but their life together and how he saw themselves as a couple, knowing each other completely.
What's interesting about the fight, if they're going to have a fight, I think Penelope has been so reluctant to tell him about her identity because obviously she's worried that he would react the same way Elle would and that she would then like lose the love of her life, which she's always wanted to be with. And that obviously if he finds out, and she knows how much he's hated Whistledown this season, but obviously not every single fight in a relationship breaks a relationship, otherwise relationships would end really fucking quick all the time, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
How are you thinking? Do you think she's going to offer to break off the engagement? Do you think she's worried he's going to break off the engagement? Do you think he's going to make it super, super clear in that initial argument? Obviously, we're still going to get married, and it's not a case of our relationship is doomed. It's just I'm mad at you or hurt by it or confused.
I feel like the emotions will be so tense and so high in this situation that they won't even be able to broach that.
Yeah.
It will just be a purely emotion-driven confrontation. And you have to think, at this point, as we speculated back in our What a Sensitive Boy episode, there is the bounty from the Queen that exists. So there may be that part of Colin that is now fearing for her also.
Protecting her.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, and there could be some poly miscommunication, as we always love, where she thinks he's angry in a different way or she thinks he's motivated by different reasons for his anger.
Also, in an interview, Nicola mentioned something about how Penelope is always crying in a carriage. And I can't off the top of my head think of many scenes.
She cried at Osterley.
Right. But always. So I'm wondering if there is perhaps, we know she takes a carriage to get there. It would be kind of a reversal.
How are they getting home?
A reversal of the books. Instead of them sharing a carriage, she is alone in a carriage, maybe on the way home or something like that.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? How are they going to get home? Unless, like, he walks her home, but he's got really, really long strides and she's, like, running behind him the whole way to keep up because he's so mad.
Polin! Stop
it! Slow down, God. You know what? We thought that they divorced the carriage scene from the emotion, but there could be like a carriage part 2. I think what I would like to see in this moment of the discovery is, even if he's hurt or blindsided or confused, I still want to see that attraction to that side of her.
I don't think we'll see that. I wonder if it'll happen in that second confrontation where we see him kiss her.
The kiss.
I feel like at this moment it's just purely him responding based on his emotions. He's hurt. He's lashing out.
Well, episode 7 of seasons past, episode 7's a really dark spot for them, because if you think about where we find Saphne at the beginning of episode 7, the episode is literally called Oceans Apart. Because they spend the whole episode completely distant from one another. And then episode 7 of season 2, you've got the Promenade of Shame, and the very different storytelling, but again, apart. This divide that we're setting up initially to get us that happy ever after. Lecky, we can assume that there's lots of drama. Colin looking very sad again. Pen devastated at this point, potentially thinking
she's lost him.
She might have actually lost him. Yeah, which I'm here for the drama. That'll be delicious.
I'm not here for the drama.
I want them to be together. I obviously do. But if the road's going to be rough, I'm going to enjoy it. So Oceans Apart, take 2, take 3, whatever take we're on.
Yeah, Mayfair's apart.
Now I've got a little question here, because obviously we need to get them reconciled. But how do you feel Penelope is going to be at this point? Do you think Colin's going to come home and, I mean, he's never been one to be able to hide his emotions, is he? He's like...
He's going to realize that Elle knew, and that's the reason why they're no longer friends.
Do you think he's going to have pieced that together? He's going to be like, because he is wondering, there was a clip from Netflix, Netherlands, and it was like a funny little compilation of him going, Pen, Penelope, from all the seasons. But there was a new clip where he says, Penelope this, Penelope that. And I think what he's doing there is, I think post-engagement, so maybe episode 5 or episode 6, he's speaking to Eloise, and because he'd want to reconcile them, right? Like, it's his wife and his sister, the best friends. And I think he's saying there, what happened between you two when you were younger? It was always Penelope this, Penelope that, and then for no reason that anyone can discern, it's ended. And so that's playing in his mind as we're in these episodes. Do you think he's going to be like, oh, that makes perfect fucking sense as to why she's estranged?
Yeah, I feel like this would be a good place for them to include a scene between Colin and Elle where he realizes that she knew that, and that we kind of start to see from Elle that she's worried for Penelope and her future with Colin. Like, she doesn't necessarily want them to be apart.
Yeah, because I think if they've just had 2 episodes of genuine, because we've heard this, that I think there was an interview with Nick and Newt from Toronto earlier where they were talking about how they have some genuinely beautiful moments together where they're openly falling in love with one another.
Yeah.
And even though there's something being concealed with Whistledown, that isn't a lie. That's still very truthful. They're still truly falling for one another. And if Eloise sees that, yes, Pen is holding something back, but they genuinely love each other, then it's interesting because it's so different. In the past, we'd wondered if Colin was going to try and reconcile Peneloise. But here it looks like Eloise having that perspective and having gone through what it means to be estranged from your best friend.
Yes, I don't think she will try to convince Colin to forgive Penelope, but I think that we will see in her, like, the regret that she didn't want Penelope to be found out.
Just him speaking to her.
Yeah, I think Claudia Jessie would play a moment like that so well, because we kind of see that when Polin come in and announce their engagement to the Bridgertons, you see on her face all of her emotions. And I feel like this will be another scene where we see in her face that she didn't want this to happen and that she is worried for Penelope and also sad for Colin.
Possibly a little Eloise and Colin, not a showdown, but a talk where they sort of hash that out, and maybe very slowly Colin starts to come around. Maybe while Penelope is sort of left not knowing what's happening with their relationship, they're slowly coming around. Do you think Elle might reach out to Pen?
I don't know.
Don't forget that if Cressida's taking credit, is that going to push Elle back to Pen as a way to be like, Pen's in danger?
I think that Blackmail will push Eloise back.
We'll come to that then, maybe. The threads are starting to be woven, but we're not
quite there.
We're not the whole tapestry. I don't know what that is as a metaphor. We can't keep them separated forever. How on earth are we going to reconcile our lovely Polin?
So it looks like from what we've seen that there may be a reconciliation at the Bug Ball, because the astrologer who did a special segment with Nicola and Luke, she posted a little snippet of their interview on her own Instagram page, and there was a new shot of Colin in tears, but he smiles.
Like happy tears.
Yeah, so I think this is the moment of the reconciliation at the Butterfly Ball. And I said that this makes sense to me, that it's the end of Penelope's transformation. This is her emerging from the chrysalis. She's a butterfly. And to me, it makes sense that Colin accepts her and the Whistledown of her at the ball where she's the final version of herself, where she's fully exposed to him.
Spoiler alert.
And this is the clip that we've seen where he also says, "You're bloody brilliant." Like, he's watching her already, which is so cute. And she feels his gaze or just wants to find him, turns, and she looks really unsure and sad. And she sort of meets his gaze. And I think she doesn't know. I think he's processed it at that point.
Yeah, but she doesn't.
Spoilers.
Because that's a key component of the Whistledown, is that ultimately Colin is extremely proud of her. Once he's sort of worked through other things, and I'm not saying the issue is resolved, but when he's grappling with her identities, whereas I think in that moment when he says, "You're brilliant," which is something that's all she'd ever wanted to hear, that's something goes back to book pen. She's like, in her dreams, he accepted Whistledown and was proud.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like you say, like him seeing her for her whole self, that final form. It isn't just him in a mirror with the childhood friend he's grown to love.
We think they'll reconcile at the Bug Ball.
At the Bug Ball, they reconcile, have a very sweet dance. The wedding's on. The wedding's back on. We don't even know if the wedding was off at any point, but it's going full steam ahead. We've got a wedding to plan. It's got to go ahead, hasn't it? Let's go have some bachelor party drinks. Let's go have a stag do. So today we saw a clip from, was it ITG? ITN?
IGN?
IGN.
International Games Network, I suppose.
I spent 2 hours watching a live stream about Xbox. And then I missed it because I just gave up, and then I missed it, and then I saw the end of it. So we had a new clip today from the actual drinks, and we had Will, we had Colin, Benedict, and lovely John. It was a very sweet little clip. It was quite revelatory because Colin looks happy, good. So he looks like he's happy about getting married, which is all we can really hope for in this life.
Have you removed the cake from the oven? I sure fucking hope you have, because hot diggity damn, that thing might be burnt. If you're waiting for me. You need to allow the cake to cool in the pan on the wire rack for 1 hour. Okay? Patience is a virtue, which is what Eloise needs to have in part 2. I know she wants Pen to tell Colin, but sometimes you just need to let people work out their thoughts, because they're about to completely destroy somebody's life with information that they're telling them. Not completely destroy, because we know that they're going to end up together, so I'm sorry. But, patience is a virtue.
But we did get some other little crumbs in the name of What a Front podcast.
Before we get to my silent friend, Fife is in the background.
Yes, he's not invited to the drinks.
And it looks like they're at White's, not Will's bar. So perhaps Will is kind of leaning into his,
Giving it up.
society persona and trying to distance himself from the bar at this point before that whole subplot is resolved. We see our favorite Fife in the background with, I think, Basilio.
We forgive you, boys.
It seems there's some drama going on with Fran. It seems like Violet doesn't like John.
Aww.
Poor John. I mean, their relationship is going to be short enough as it is to have some drama with the mother-in-law. It's not ideal.
Violet is going to feel bad about that in a couple of years.
But basically, the others are trying to give him advice for how to mend that not quite rift, but to impress Violet and to prove that he loves Fran. So Benedict says that Violet loves love stories. They want him to prove his love, and they recommend he do a bold gesture of some kind. And I was thinking that the way that might play out is that for John, a bold gesture isn't going to be that bold, but it is going to be romantic, and it will be something that makes Francesca fall more in love with him, but it's not necessarily going to impress Violet.
She's not going to understand it.
And I feel like that final approval from Violet, it has to be after she has an interaction with Fran at some point. It's not really about John. It's about her understanding Fran.
I think that's what we're sort of heading towards. We saw it a little bit in part 1 that Violet doesn't quite get Francesca. She loves her very, very much, but she's so different to her other children, her other chaotic children, that I think she's struggling to grasp the difference. One thing I just want to shout out is I love in episode 4, Prophet Hyacinth's little moment. I thought that was so clever how the other siblings didn't understand. They were like, they're not speaking to one another. And Hyacinth was the one to be like, maybe that's how they like it.
Yeah.
So Hyacinth has a read, but it sounds like Violet just doesn't understand their type of love because it's not overt, because she's used to her children being so chaotic and overt. Colin chasing after a carriage and then dragging his fiancée back into the house. She understands that gesture. She understands that means love, but it's just her understanding this different type. So I love that little scene. Any thoughts on how that might get resolved, or are we leaving that for another episode or two?
I think we will see happy Fran dancing like we see in the trailer. So I feel like that might be resolved at the very end of episode 7. And I feel like that would be a good contrast because I feel like at that point we have happy Polin, but something happens that immediately puts their marriage kind of back on the rocks. And that's kind of contrasting with happy Fran's love story. Their love story is just starting, and so is Polin's, but theirs is a little bit on the rocks.
So we think that Fran are going to get engaged in this episode because at the Polin wedding, John is part of the wedding party, which only makes sense for him to be part of the wedding party if he was officially connected to the family by an engagement. Okay, we've talked about the wedding a lot then. How are we envisioning the wedding going down? Are we getting a happy wedding?
I think it'll be a happy wedding, but I also hope they kind of lean into the comedy of it and the chaos of Portia thinking it's just as much her wedding as Polin's wedding. We mentioned this episode that there probably are going to be a ton of redheads. We saw 2 of them in the bright green jackets in the trailer in the background. Something I imagine could be funny is if they maybe pan from Lady Danbury's enormous hat, blocking the view of like half a dozen people on one side of the church over to the Featherington side of the church, and the pews are all crowded with redheads. And I thought it could be interesting if along the way we saw that Elle is in fact in one of the pews on the Bridgerton side. She did not miss the wedding.
Did not.
They did not show her in the trailer at the wedding, but I imagine that even if there is this rift with Penelope, it would be really odd if she wasn't there. So I think she will be there.
So we think Elle has made it to the wedding.
Yes.
Because like you say, it would be tragic if she didn't. So wedding reception, we're off to Claydon House. So
yes.
Claydon House, we know they use this for the reception ball because we've seen it in the footage. It's great because it's Featherington colours, but it's kind of extravagant. It's the perfect place. So it seems to be doubling as a Featherington house. We also know that during this period, they shot at Basildon, especially for that secret sequence where it was super, super snowy and they were like, uh-oh, we need this to look like a beautiful Regency spring summer.
Yeah. So we know they shot outside. But because the interiors are used for Lady Tilly's house, we could be getting more Lady Tilly scenes, but it seems like they were shooting outside as well. And I think it could be cute if this is a moment where Cullen maybe steals Pen away for a moment in their garden at their wedding reception, kind of bringing that element full circle from episode 1. We kind of hinted that they might return to the garden one last time. Maybe for the public love declaration that we speculated about, that could be really sweet. That could also happen during the Bug Ball, which is supposed to be at the Featherington house, but I feel like this post-wedding reception seems like a better place for it.
Maybe a quiet moment between them would be super beautiful. Like you say, like that full circle moment. We've got lovely dancing. Pen looks amazing. We've got Fran dancing together.
Happily.
While the cake is cooling down, you're going to whisk all of the icing ingredients together and you will pour it over the cake. And you can serve it immediately while it's hot or wait until the cake cools completely, which, you know, that will give you some neater slices. But it's going to be up to you. Sometimes you got to hit the iron while the iron is hot. Or however they fucking say it.
At this point, Colin and Pen both think that they're sort of on the same page. They're taking on the world together. But of course, this is only episode 7 of 8. Something else has got to be a spanner in the works. What are you thinking, Lek? What have you cooked up?
I think this is where the Blackmail plot comes into play. And I feel like they'll be focusing a lot on the Elle Cressida relationship as well, because as we've seen in past seasons, not just this season, Elle isn't really a great listener.
Shocking news.
She's not a great listener. And we even see in this season that when Cressida is trying to express her fears about her parents marrying her off to somebody else, Elle isn't really listening. She's kind of absorbed in her own world and cracking jokes. Like, she doesn't realize how scary that is for Cressida. And that's what drives Cressida to try to pose as Lady Whistledown probably in the first place. So I feel like this is a time where Cressida will be extremely desperate because her Lady Whistledown ruse we think will fall through at the Bug Ball, because it looks like the Queen shows up, she points a finger. I think she's pointing at Cressida because Cressida has been exposed by the real Lady Whistledown at this point as a fraud. And I feel like at this point, Cressida is betrothed to her father's aged friend, and she will not be happy. She will have no other option, she thinks, to get out of it. So I feel like this will be a moment where that feeling of sadness will be amplified if she detects that the rift between Elle and Penelope is also healing, because then she'll be losing this friend too, in addition to facing this horrible marriage and life that she doesn't really want. So I thought it could be interesting if there's like an awkward moment where Elle and Cressida are interacting at the Polin wedding, and if they maybe contrast with that scene in episode 1 where on the promenade where they make that pact to only focus on their friendship. And I thought it could be interesting if they have this conversation where they're only talking about other people, where Cressida tries to mention the fact that the family is trying to marry her off, or maybe how terrible her future husband is. And Elle is kind of focused on Penelope and Colin, because even if her feelings toward Penelope are starting to soften, it's kind of an awkward transition for her, realizing that they're now united, and she and Penelope their friendship, it will never be the same, even if they mend their rift.
It's a big life moment for Eloise, isn't it? And that can make her sort of wrapped up in, this is a big moment for me. And it's sort of accidentally making her blind to what's happening to Cressida, which is interesting because Cressida has been deeply characterised as a complex character, and if there is a blackmail, it isn't coming from I'm jealous, I don't like you, it's coming from a point of desperation, which is far more humanising. Desperation mixed in with sadness at losing the one friend she's really had to someone who ultimately has caused her trouble all fucking season, because don't forget, had Pen not gone off to Debbling in the first place, she'd have still ended up with Colin, and Debbling could have been with Cressida.
And she may view this as a betrayal if she realizes that Penelope and Eloise's friendship is starting to mend itself. And I wondered if this might be a moment where Elle could slip up and help Cressida figure out that Pen is Lady Whistledown. If they stick to the books, I think it'd be clever if this plays out with Elle maybe quoting something that Penelope has said, or that she likes to say, that was maybe also in a recent issue of Lady Whistledown. Or maybe there's a moment at the reception where Penelope interrupts Elle and Cressida's conversation, and Cressida realizes that Penelope and Elle are friends again, and this could be a moment where Penelope finally stands up to Cressida, contrasting from that moment in episode 1 where she wasn't really able to stand up for herself when Cressida was bullying her, a reversal of that, and in the process she damns herself by saying something that she said in an issue of Lady Whistledown.
So a little tragic moment at the wedding.
Yeah, but I think there will be one more scene after this, if you mentioned, where the Cressida will show up and blackmail her.
So, Polin are married. What do you think the cliffhanger is going to be for the episode? Because we can't leave them just happily married. There has to be something pretty major.
Yeah. I think it will be the blackmail. I think it will be Cressida showing up at Polin's new home, confronting Penelope with the blackmail.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, episode 8. Into the light. If there's a little blackmail plot, then surely the opening is part of this. Is going to be the fallout of the blackmail. So we have married Polin here, much like the books, but obviously their early days of marriage, not quite in the honeymoon period just yet.
Yeah, so I feel like this will be the moment where, as Luke has hinted, that Colin makes the situation worse somehow. He gets kind of too swept into the drama, makes the situation worse, and maybe that leads to Penelope publishing without telling him, triggering that second confrontation we saw in the trailer and that heated kiss between them. Because at that point, it will be Polin against the world, but maybe we'll still see Moody, leading us to question whether they will get a happy ending.
Obviously, we have, from the trailer, some key moments. We have him with his tragic cup of tea, where it looks like he's slept close to her, but ultimately on the sofa outside of her room. And then, like you say, that other moment of them, it looks like they're on that street where the Medusas, sort of maybe on the printers, somewhere like that. Do you think that Penelope, in her desperation, is going to write something without telling him, which is that scene that we have of her at her marriage desk? We talked about it last episode with her back to the bed and the mirror. She's writing something, not consulting Colin. He follows her again, is upset that once again, that scene in the trailer where he's like, what good am I to you if I can't look after you? And obviously they kiss, but do you think this scene then leads on to him not sleeping in the same bed as her? Because they've had like a kiss of reconciliation, or is that not a kiss of reconciliation? How do we get to tragic tea?
I'm guessing that tragic tea happens after that heated kiss, because he's still working through the fact that she's like acting without him, because he wants to be a full partner with her. And I feel like after this point is when they become partners and Polin against the world, and that they will work together on the issue of the blackmail. Maybe Penelope will decide to go to the Queen, but that Colin will be informed of that decision.
So we think he's going to have his tragic cup of tea, Pen will come out, they'll talk it out, they'll figure it out, they'll get past it pretty quickly because they've got a lot to get through in the episode, and they'll finally decide that I'm not going to save you from everything all the time, but you have to consult me in this. We're partners. Yeah. And they sit down and figure out how they're going to get past it. Do you think they're going to go see Cantony?
That's right, because Cantony are supposed to influence them somehow.
Or support them in some way.
I wonder, though, if it'll be kind of ambiguous, is what I was thinking, whether or not Colin is supporting Penelope's plan at this point, because they kind of want to trick us into thinking that maybe the happy ending isn't going to happen. So I feel like maybe Penelope will tell him that she wants to go to the Queen, and we won't really get a sense of how Colin is feeling about that. And maybe he goes to see Cantony after that point, and they're kind of like, they give him some advice about love.
Maybe it's a setup of he's like, because it's like the books, right? I think we should go see my siblings and ask them. I think we've talked about this before, where like Colin is like, I'm happy with the plan that I'm going to go see my siblings and we're going to sort this out. Whereas we think that Pen isn't really going to go along with that and is going to sort of cut him out. So he goes along with that. And meanwhile, we think that she's going to cut him out and go see the Queen. Because this is ultimately what we thought before, that the solution that they're going to come up with is to, instead of giving into the blackmail, is for Penelope to go to the Queen directly.
Yep, I like that.
And say, I'm Lady Whistledown, to sort of stop someone puppeteering her life at that point.
Yeah, we discussed, and we kind of like the idea of there maybe being a fake out with the Queen, where we think Penelope has gone to see the Queen alone, but then we kind of pan over and see that Colin is there with her, by her side.
Because they need to be united and together and on the same page.
Yeah, because Pen can't at this point betray Colin again. So close to their happy ever after. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they need to actually be in it together.
So he has to be handling this issue with her. He has to know and support her decision, is what I was thinking.
They go to the Queen, confess. How do you think the Queen's going to take that?
I think she, in the long run, will be, first of all, impressed with Penelope, because what makes this more interesting is that scene in episode 1 where Lady Danbury points out Penelope to the Queen and mentions, like, oh, you know, she's just a spinster. So she finds out not only did the spinster fall in love and get this really great match this season, but all along she has been the one who's been Lady Whistledown. So I think that she will be impressed with Penelope.
Because the Queen's never hated her and she's never wanted her dead or anything. But she's enjoyed the game, and it's like having the opportunity to meet the person behind the game.
And by this point in the story, and we kind of saw that in the trailer, it seems like the moment where Lady Whistledown is caught, she like smiles, but then her face falls because she doesn't want the game to be over. Yeah. By this point, she's also had a kind of fake out where she thinks she's caught Lady Whistledown. It wasn't the real Lady Whistledown. And I imagine that she felt some kind of relief when she realized that Lady Whistledown actually hadn't been caught. So I feel like by this point, she'll realize that she wants Lady Whistledown to continue and that she doesn't want to silence the woman behind the scandal sheet.
Yeah, and ultimately, she loves love stories. That's a huge motivation for her, something we saw why in her own season. And I think that if Colin is there with her, and she's like, what do you think of her being this notorious? Like, she's influenced your life as much as anybody else. And if he's standing next to her and he's like, I'm really proud of her, and I think she's been brilliant. And I think if she sees the love between the two of them, that will soften her exponentially. And like you say, it hasn't been about destroying her, but I suppose the interesting thing is, what does the Queen want? Does she want to silence her and stop her writing forever?
Yeah, she liked the game of it. Yes. Is what we saw. So I feel like she will give Penelope approval to continue being Lady Whistledown, I think, and help resolve the blackmail plot in some way. Something that also comes to mind is that Nicola said that she wanted Penelope to have it all. So I feel like she needs to continue on as Lady Whistledown, and that the Queen will support her endeavor once she's exposed.
It feels like the Featherington Air plot has been a big part of the season, and I feel like ultimately we all know that it looks like Polin are being set up to win the race of the air. And I think that that's all lovely and great and everything like that. But I think a part of Pen's story is that she's this incredible businesswoman and she's built something that she's ultimately proud of and that Colin is ultimately going to be proud of as well. And I feel like to continue that feels quite important to her story. And I feel like it's an important message as well to sort of learn that you can have it all as a woman, because so often we're told that we can't, or so often it feels like you have to choose or compromise in your life. You have to choose between your career or having a family. Or having this dream and that dream, and feeling like you can't. And to see a character who's been so powerful but misunderstood be able to have everything in her life. And I'm not saying that I want Whistledown to continue forever and ever and ever. I feel like there still needs to be growth. I feel like there's still a story in there for us to explore in future seasons.
Yeah, and we've talked in the past about how Eloise, seeing Penelope happily married but also having a career, could help her find comfort in the idea of falling in love.
Yeah, marriage isn't a trap where your dreams die. And again, proportioned the bits that we've seen from the trailer, you don't have to kill your dreams to be with someone you love.
We also speculated in a past episode that for the Queen to resolve the blackmail, there might be a moment where the Queen, kind of playing into that moment in episode 1 where she kind of says that she loves the game, she will admit that she publicly, perhaps at like a ball or some other gathering, that she has won the game. She's the victor. She has found out who the real Lady Whistledown is, but she is not going to expose her, kind of silencing the blackmailer inadvertently. Cressida will realize she can't come forward because now that Penelope has the Queen's support.
Maybe overtly, because, you know, we've talked about the Eros and Psyche, that's a popular part of the season. Because if we go to the Eros and Psyche, we don't know if that's going to continue the whole way, or if that sort of culmination was in episode 4. But if you want to go to the end of that, the resolution is that Zeus, who is the king of the gods, sanctions the marriage of Eros and Psyche and basically stands there because Aphrodite isn't happy about it. And he basically says, Aphrodite, you need to get over it. it. I've officially deemed protection and sanctity for this marriage, and I think he grants Psyche immortality and everything like that. And I think this is a moment where the Queen stands there and does the same thing of saying, I give my protection to Whistledown, and says, if any, because I think that Penn will tell the Queen what's happening. I think the Queen will be pissed off that someone's blackmailing her game, because that's rigging her, that's influencing her game, isn't it? It's like
interfering.
Yeah, and she doesn't like that. And I don't think she'd respect that either. And I think what she'll say is, if anyone tries to expose Whistledown without my express permission, you will have me to answer to. And that ultimately protects Penn and creates this bubble where she can keep writing, keep the game, but have growth in the game, have growth in what Whistledown does, but stops her from being exposed and put in danger.
Just to dig into that just a little bit deeper, I wonder if Queen Charlotte is Venus, is Aphrodite, if Brimsley is Zeus, and he is the one who kind of helps her realize that she doesn't want Lady Whistledown to be silenced and exposed publicly. Or alternatively, Queen Charlotte is both Zeus and Aphrodite in this scenario, because I remember when they were talking about costumes or something like that in a behind-the-scenes interview where Golda and Adjua were talking about how they kind of had male influence in like their wardrobes, because they're feminine characters, but they kind of incorporated like little like masculine details or something like that, because they kind of represent both. And I think it was mostly with Lady Danbury's character, but I wonder if they're also playing that into that with the Queen, because she is the ruler, you know what I mean? So maybe she is both masculine and feminine and playing both of those roles at the end of Polin's love story.
The king of the gods, but also the matchmaker and the protector of love in the ton. She's such an advocate for love, when really, as the head of society, she could easily be like, I just care about the upholding of society, but she loves love. So do you think that it ends with Penn being protected, Colin being super, super proud of her, and they have a beautiful, happy ever ending, they're safe from everything, and they go off?
Well, I feel like there'll be some wrap-up moments in between there, because we will probably, I think we'll see, because we mentioned this in our Crumbs, that you saw the swings out behind Ranger's house. So I feel like there will be an Elle and Ben scene on the swings before she ends up leaving with Fran.
Do you think it's going to be really difficult to tell whose season it's going to be next?
I think it will be difficult to tell, because she's leaving on this journey, and I feel like he's going to be in a really rough place, because as we speculated in the past, we think he might be burned by his relationship with Lady Tilly somehow and kind of close himself off to love. So they're both going to be kind of in this darker place. And I feel like we'll see some sort of Eloise moment, their final reconciliation before Eloise leaves on her journey as well. And then I was thinking the other thing we have to see before Fran leave is their actual wedding. So I thought maybe they might have a small affair at the Bridgerton house. I suppose they could reuse the church since they had the location anyway, but I think it would be really sweet if they have a quiet, intimate wedding at the Bridgerton house, maybe in the Bridgerton drawing room or something like that. And you had an idea about how this might have played out, Obs, as well.
Yeah, so in a recent interview with Kat Quinn, with the production designers, they revealed that portrait of Edmund and Violet was specifically made for that moment where Francesca looks up at the portrait early in the season, which means that portrait is part of Fran's story, right? So I think if they got married in the Bridgerton drawing room under the portrait of their parents, in a moment where if Violet has struggled with accepting their relationship, but that's a very like healing moment where Violet is fully on board, I think that'd be beautiful. I think it suits them to have a really quiet, intimate wedding, because that's who they are as characters and together as a couple. I think that would be lovely. But speaking of Violet and Fran, we do think there'll be a little reconciliation moment, don't we? Like,
we think we may see them playing the piano together.
So this may sound really super specific, but the other day I was watching the credits, because I do things like that, and I noticed that it said that there was a piano tutor for Hannah Dodd and Ruth Gemmell. So obviously we know that Hannah Dodd had lots of lessons to be able to play the pianoforte, but I saw Ruth Gemmell and I was like, why on earth did Ruth Gemmell have a piano tutor? Because I don't think we've seen her play the piano at any point. And now a lot of their story has been Francesca is on her very own distinct rhythm, which we have seen John meet her with, like when he had the music transformed to her rhythm because she found it too fast. And Violet understands fast. Violet understands the swift engagement of Polin, but she hasn't understood this slower, quieter form of love that Francesca has been involved with. And I think a beautiful moment of reconciliation between the mother and daughter would be if Violet sat by by her and literally played a piece of music with her, literally speaking her language. Because there's a moment very early in the season where Violet is trying to get into Francesca's head and like understand her perspective, and she starts to use music metaphors, but you can see that she's not quite sure how to do it. And she says, "My dear, think of the balls as playing a duet. When you play with another person, there is a certain vulnerability, which can be quite frightening, I would imagine, but it is worth it once you find that person with whom you make an unexpected harmony."
Interesting that she uses the word duet and then potentially may have a duet with Fran.
That would be sweet. And Fran says, "I'm not certain I need to feel butterflies or unexpected harmony, per your metaphor." But what happens is, and what Violet needs to get her head around, is that she does have harmony with John. It's just expressed in a way she's not certain of.
How I imagine this might play is that perhaps Fran goes and gets changed after the wedding. She's getting ready to travel and leave with John and Elle. And that, kind of like in the beginning of episode 1, Violet hears the piano playing and she goes and she finds Fran playing the piano by herself. And there's a moment where she kind of takes in Fran and realizes that she's happy. And to express her approval in Fran's love match and the life she's chosen for herself, that Violet will maybe join her at the piano and join her in a song and play a duet with her. And it'd be really sweet if they're facing that portrait of Edmund and Violet, because we know that there are two storylines. There's a lot of parallels between Violet and Fran's lives, sadly, and the future lives that they'll have together. But it will be a story of spoilers if you haven't listened to our past episode or read the books. It will be a short-lived romance, but that Fran will find love again, and their storylines kind of mirror each other's.
We've had our beautiful reconciliation. All is well.
Family is going to see off Fran.
Fran's off.
Penelope's head, maybe on a spike, maybe she's there in person, alive and well.
Who knows? Not me, not you. Yeah. All that's time for is a little epilogue. Now, you know, in the past, I've said I want them travelling. I don't know that they are going to travel anymore. What are you thinking?
Well, first of all, in our Crumbs episode, we also mentioned that there may be one last ball, potentially at the Bridgerton house, hosted perhaps by Violet, because we saw Lady Danbury's carriage outside of Ranger's house, along with a lot of extras in ball attire entering the home. So this could potentially be the final ball of the season, maybe even a masquerade. And I was thinking it could be interesting if we have a little Polin moment, but then the camera kind of drifts away from them and we see maybe some sort of hint of Sophie or Ben turning to look at somebody perhaps before we finally get the happy Polin epilogue.
Because episode 8 has to be the setup for the next season, because 108 we had Anthony saying that about love, 208 we had Colin fucking up, 308 let's get it set up.
So in a past episode, we mentioned that in our ideal epilogue, Happy Polin, that we might see Penelope writing and that she would look out her window and see Colin. And that almost seems even more fitting now because we realize how important that window is in their love story, that she's always looking out at the window. So I was thinking it could be interesting if they instead have a camera looking out at the window and that we see Polin together, either maybe entering or exiting Bloomsbury, or like we speculated earlier, Pen is writing at her desk at Bloomsbury and she looks outside and sees Colin and smiles, because we have those ending scenes in season 1 and season 2 of her kind of looking out her window and looking upset, but this time she is blissfully happy.
Or maybe they're writing together. Just that whole thing we've just broken down about episode 7 and 8, just insert a plot line about Colin and his writing. It
could be cute if, tying into my original theory, if they're writing together in like their study at Bloomsbury and then the camera drifts out the window and we get into kind of the other characters as they're wrapping up the other storylines. I also thought it would be hilarious. I said in a past episode that we might see kind of glimpses of the other characters and what they're doing. But originally I speculated that maybe Elle would be in the carriage on the way to wherever with Fran. But I think that if this happens significantly after the ball, it could be really funny if we see Eloise in the home she's sharing with Fran and it's like drop dead quiet and she looks so frustrated that she maybe turns to her correspondence or something to kind of keep herself occupied. And then the last point that we didn't really mention, I'm not exactly sure where this would happen. I'm assuming the Mondriches, as we've said in a past episode, will find someone else to run their bar, and I think that Colin may play into that. He will repay his debt by finding them a manager for their bar.
All's well that ends well. Well, lecky, on that note, I think our days in the lab,
Crumbs lab,
well and truly over. We have crumbed our way through the past 2 years, and I suppose all that awaits us now is the truth in high quality definition.
We dug a massive hole. Now we need to find a way to get out of it.
I think we're so beyond that. Let's see if Veg can throw us a rope. But just before we do finally sign off our very last Crumbs expedition, Queen Beans, we have one more task for you. How many blurry, pixelated Polins did we see this episode?
Members of the ton, we have blurs.
So, Lecky, get out the lab. Let's go find Veg again. Beans is still out there. I mean, I assume it's made by this point, the cake.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he's still baking. We don't know what's going on with the cake. She's there. We're here. Out of the lab.
You guys look great in your lab coats.
Thank you.
So sorry you'll be hanging them up.
Oh, yeah.
I know, like, it's our last time in the lab, babe.
Sad. See, I told you it's sad.
It is sad. Unless you're really in the mood for some banoffee crumbs. Or for Eloise.
I've meant to ask you about this. How do you say that pairing, Veg?
Benefit.
That's how I say it too.
Oh, no, you say benefit.
And she pronounces it like the food, and I was just wondering. I was just wondering.
I'm just food orientated.
We'll have to do a poll. Bridgerton fans, how do you pronounce Benedict and Sophie's ship name? I say Benefit.
I thought it was like banoffee pie.
Oh.
Like banoffee.
Yeah,
Benefit. Like Benedict and Sophie, I suppose. Banoffee.
Anyway, I'm just curious.
Banoffee.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, how do you say fron?
Prawn.
Like fron.
Like prawn.
Fron.
That's the whole point.
Prawn.
Is it's supposed to sound like prawn because that amuses me.
Saffney's easy. Now, Cantony, I call them Cantony.
Yeah, Cantony.
Or some people call them Catony.
I can see why people might call it like Catony.
Catani.
Yeah, I like Cantony.
Or it's like Catani, like Cathani
Yeah.
and Anthony. And then obviously got Polin, straightforward. Or Calliope.
No, that's terrible.
Philoise, easy. Philoise. Banoffee.
Benefit.
Banoffee, like banoffee pie.
I just
Benefit.
thought I'd mention it because I'm just curious. Listeners, please weigh in.
So for the past 2 years, have you just been listening to me going, Banoffee?
No, it's just,
Well, there's no right answer.
Yes, there is, Veg.
I think I was editing one day and you mentioned the ship name and I was like, I should really ask her about that at some point.
What are we even talking about?
This is just the outro, babe.
Our outro for our last Crumbs episode. The final crumb down has crumbed.
We've crumbed our last crumb. Anyway, Lecky and I have put forward, I don't know if it's our theory more than like what we would ideally like to happen.
Yeah.
Veg, just touching base with you because it's the last time we're going to speak to you before part 2, really. And we get all the answers we've been waiting for 2 years. Do you want Pen to keep writing as Lady Whistledown? Or do you think this is going to be the end of Whistledown? Do you think she's going to be revealed to the ton? Or do you think it'll just be with maybe the Bridgertons and the Queen?
I think just Bridgerton's and the Queen will know.
We got to keep her writing, right?
I want her to keep writing.
You can't lose Julie Andrews.
And Nicola has said that she wants Pen to have it all. And I feel like that should include her career.
Yeah, I feel like if Pen gives up Whistledown, it's saying that you can't have it all.
We've talked about this in many episodes, actually, that Polin's marriage could be
Inspiration for Elle.
yeah, for Eloise and her own love story, that she also can have marriage and marriages in a prison and women still can explore their own interests.
I think in my ideal world, I'd have Pen and Colin in season 4 with Pen still as Whistledown, but like it's less high stakes. We get some like Lord Whistledown moments, but then Pen does something important for, if it is Banoffee,
Sophie.
yeah, I'd be happy for Pen to sort of give up Whistledown after season 4, but in a way that's like, I'm going to pivot to like writing and stuff like that. Like, I don't want her to like give up what she loves.
Yeah, agreed.
And, you know, obviously the last episode that you heard from us, we were very stressed about the trailer. I'm sure all will end up well. I'm sure Pen and Colin.
Oh, yeah, the astrology thing came out after and kind of alleviated a lot of our fears about Polin's relationship in these last 4 episodes. So, yeah, apologies. But as we said, Polin fans, dark sense of humor, it's our coping mechanism. So that was us working through that.
Exactly.
Spoiler alert.
Because we were like, the bug ball might be this really tense moment between them. And then there was a clip of Colin being like, you're bloody brilliant.
Yeah.
It's very sweet.
Spoilers.
I'm sure all would be well. Is there any specific moment that you're really looking forward to? I am a drama queen at heart, so I am excited about all the moments of all the Polin drama. Oh, I cannot wait for the Penelope's reconciliation. That is going to be gorgeous to see.
Same.
Colin seeing Penelope walk down the aisle will probably have me bawling.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, I need lots of tissues for part 2.
Oh, Lecky crying. Oh, fucking hell, what a shock. A question I asked you before part 1 that I'd like to know now. Rank the episodes for me. I think I'll go because I think I've had more time to think about it.
Okay.
I'm going to go, this might sound really weird, 7 5, 8, 6.
I think that's where I was going to. I think 5 I'm going to enjoy, not because of the drama, but because I feel like the storytelling of it is going to be really tight.
Yeah.
And I feel like the intensity of the engagement party is going to be really fun.
I love like a concept episode.
And it looks like we have a lot of happy Polin moments in there as well.
It'll be good seeing everyone's reaction.
Yes. Like that clip that we saw the other day of the family embracing Pen was just so perfect. I always said that 5 intrigued me most, but I think 7, because I'm such a drama whore, I think I want to see them arguing and upset.
Well, I chose 7 because I want to see the wedding.
Oh yeah, that's the wedding.
So I would do 7, 5, 8, 6, because I feel like 8 will also be kind of fraught until the end.
Yeah, because 7 would be them like fighting, but then resolving it and then getting married. And I think like that arc is very beautiful. 5 is like you say, like the tight storytelling, the drama. If he gets her a house, I will cry. Well, I won't because I don't have emotions, but I will sort of nod at my screen. And then 8, I always like episode 8 because they're always like an exhale. And then obviously like the ending, there's something beautiful about that.
Epilogue.
And then I feel like 6, I'm putting 6 slightly last just because.
Most of the drama, I think. Most of the drama and no relief from the drama is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think 6 is just a lot of it building. And then it'll only like hit at the very end.
Yeah.
And then episode 6 is always messy in Bridgerton. In like a good way, because like you always have the turn at the end. But Veg, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that I'm just going to copy you guys.
Yeah.
I just don't have opinions. I've really stressed myself out about this part 2. I'm sure it'll be lovely.
Yeah, that's basically it. Also, guys, it's not just part 2. It's our 1-year anniversary on the 13th.
That's true. I forgot about that.
We won't have time to celebrate it because
We'll be watching.
obviously part 2 is more important than our anniversary.
Yeah.
Who could have predicted that? Had we been able to predict that, I don't think the podcast would have run that long.
Happy 1-year anniversary to us saying, this will be a good thing to do for a few months, maybe August, worst case, December.
This will get us to August 25th.
Yeah.
But any last thoughts before we head in to Polin Week? The finale, the answers, everything we spent 2 years working towards.
Thank you, everybody who has listened and continues to listen and who has just found us also.
Yeah.
We realize that a lot of our episodes are kind of unlistenable and that we have a lot of speculation that is just wrong, but our goal was just kind of to keep everybody occupied until the show came out, and we hope you were entertained along the way, and just thank you.
Yeah, it's been very fun to clown with you all. If you are a new listener and you've listened to all our episodes in like 2 days, sorry, first of all.
Fucking hell, yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, our audio quality gets slightly better over time. So if you're going back to the beginning, apologies, and it will get better.
And we were like timid little mice in the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
Because we don't really know what we're doing. And we still don't, to be honest. Anything else?
Yeah, really enjoy, guys. And I was just watching you two just chat shit. And I'm like, this is what we're going to miss. Like,
Oh,
stop it.
I told you. It's kind of sad.
Okay, listeners, we've had to cut loads out there because Lecky's getting sentimental. We don't have time for her to be sentimental. And what I will say is, look, we don't know what's in store for us, but it's our mess. It's our Polin story. Just embrace whatever happens. And we will be back at some point after the fact to give you our reactions. Give us a few days we need to process it first of all.
Yeah.
And then we need to gather time to record. So we won't have it out immediately. But we will have a reaction episode at some point. Until then, oh my gosh, Lecky, where can everyone find us?
You can find us at WhatABarbPod on Instagram and TikTok.
And you can find us with your ears on all podcast platforms and with your eyes on YouTube.
And here's our final installment of Lemons with Legumes.
So, Mary Peaches, how do you like this cake? I'm doing it, y'all. She's back. Oh, that cake is quite divine. Oh, I really do like it. It's so tasty. It goes great with one of my lavender drinks. All right, bye, y'all.
And Beans, my darling Beans, will you do us the honour and sing us out?
Does the violin do 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 do.
Upon